Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks live with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm feeling awesome, Conrad. I just surprisingly fantastic, actually, would be the best way to tell you how I feel. I was expecting to come to the table today just all full of jet lag and dragging my ass. And I do have a touch of brain fog. I'm not as witty and charming as I normally am, but I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. And so is Mick Mack. He's already chiming in with us here, watching live on YouTube, saying, "Hey, Eric, hope your flight was okay. Great seeing you. Man, Australia, what a trip." And boy, things changed a little bit while you were gone. There's some things that are happening, and it's got everybody talking. And I know you had a brief moment to discuss it last week when you went live from Australia, but man, I made this analogy a couple of weeks ago. It just feels like more like the late 90s. I'm not comparing the Monday Night War era as far as show versus show, but just in the volume of news, it feels like there's something big happening every other day in professional wrestling. That's a relatively
And before we go any further, I want to shout out to Mick Mack. It was great seeing Mick in Australia. We had a chance to hang out and chat for just a bit, but it's great seeing him there. And thanks for coming out. Yeah, we are. Wow. I mean, you talk about volume of news. It was hard for me to, of course I was stuck on a plane for 26 hours and it's hard for me to put my phone down, man. There's just so much going on. It's almost hard to keep up with.
Well, we are live here on YouTube. Normally we drop 83 weeks each and every Monday, and it usually drops first thing in the morning. Eric and I usually record on Sunday, but this Sunday he was down under, as they say, in Australia. And you actually got to see Bret Hart's Australian Stampede. And I know that meant you got to spend a little bit of time with Bret. What was your experience like hanging out with the Hitman in Australia?
I wouldn't say we hung out. We said hello to each other. I met his wife, Stephanie, who was a beautiful woman and a very nice woman. But we didn't have a lot to share, or just, everybody was busy. Bret's line for 2 days, I was right next to him. My table was probably within 30 feet of his. And, his line was out the door for two solid days. So, good on Bret. And, he looked to be enjoying himself. We were watching the live event together for a brief period of time. I was in the opening segment. And by the way, shout out to Mance Warner and Josh Alexander. Had an absolute blast working with those two guys. Really, really enjoyed getting to know Mance just a little bit. We're going to probably hang out sometime in the future. But, you had to show the gut punch, didn't you? Yeah. Well, you get out in front of people and things just happen sometimes.
Do you remember taking a photo with Mance Warner in front of a Christmas tree in my living room?
Honestly, no, because if I was at your house over Christmas, chances are we were imbibing. So yeah, no, I don't.
He had a booking and he was in town, and he came to swing through and say hello. And he was like, "Is it cool if I ask Eric for a picture?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So he posted a random picture of you guys in front of a Christmas tree, and I'm sure it would make a hilarious Christmas card.
He's a cool dude. I texted him after we were done when I was, on my way home. I said, "Man, let's get together sometime and break bread and have a drink and get to know each other." Cause he's just a great guy. He's very, very positive and very talented too, by the way. He and Josh Alexander. I'm talking a lot about Mance, but this is the second time I've been introduced to Josh in person. We worked tables together once a couple of years ago in Salt Lake City, and enjoyed speaking to him briefly there, but really got a chance to know him a little bit more and certainly watch him in the ring. And I think both of them were fun as hell to work with.
If for whatever reason you just normally consume WWE and AEW, I want to encourage you, try a little TNA, even if you have a predisposition already about that promotion. Give it another shot, because you need to see Josh Alexander, among other things. But Josh Alexander is a world-class talent. If you love professional wrestling, you're going to love what he does between those ropes. And I think Mance Warner is probably one of the, bright spots in a free agent. I mean, he doesn't have a major contract right now, but the guy's entertaining. He can cut a promo. He can talk.
Oh, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time.
Totally agree.
And I think for me, and it wasn't just my interactions with him, and I saw a lot of this backstage, by the way. There was a lot of great talent there. Of course, got to work with Mickie James again. And it was nice to see her and her son running around like, having a blast. Reminded me of Garrett when he was just a little older than Mickey and Nick's son. That was fun. Shelton Benjamin, got to hang out with Shelton quite a bit. Just had a great time.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, and I'm excited for us to talk about all that happened while you were gone. But before we get into all the news and notes, we've got one more question about jolly old England, or actually just in the UK. And this is from Alex Hall. He wants to know, Eric, what's your favorite memory from being in the UK in your time? Of course, we're talking about you doing some international travel. There's been more than one time you've gone across the pond for wrestling. Any memories stand out in the UK?
Yeah, the last tour I did with Inside the Ropes, Kenny McIntosh and his team, I have a 8x10 hanging in my office in the bunkhouse. And I made a point of telling Kenny before I left to do that tour that this will likely be the last European tour. Not that I won't make an appearance here and there if one comes up, a single appearance, but as far as touring and being there for an extended period of time, I wanted this one to be my last one because I've worked with Kenny before and his team, kind of knew it was going to be special. And I wanted my last tour to be something that I would look back on fondly. And man, did they over deliver. Kenny and his entire team, Fiona, everybody. I brought my wife with me because I knew this was probably going to be the last time I would do that. And it was so much fun, so rewarding, and developed such great relationships there. There's no one moment along that tour because it was very meaningful from the time I got off the plane to the time I left. In fact, I may be going back sometime soon. Not even sure, but this time it'll be just for personal reasons.
Well, shout out to Kenny McIntosh over WrestleMania weekend. My man wound up getting engaged, which I thought was pretty cool. So congrats to him. That's so cool.
We are two great guys, man.
Well, let's talk about some news that happened while you were gone. And I'm going to open up with something that you and I probably never imagined we would talk about. Sue Aitchison is no longer with WWE. She's been the director of community relations for nearly 4 decades. She obviously won the Warrior Award, if you're watching along with us on 83weeks.com a handful of years ago. But I don't know this officially. I haven't asked anybody in an official capacity, but I believe she was the longest tenured employee for WWE. I mean, think about that. We're talking nearly 40 years. My goodness. I was kind of shocked to see Sue step away, but I was even more interestingly shocked that this was a story and got some chatter online. Respectfully, Sue's like retirement age. This is a normal thing. After you work somewhere for 40 years, it's okay to retire. It doesn't mean there's a salacious story, but a WWE without Vince and a WWE without Sue. What WWE is this, Eric?
And I'm sure they're going to be just fine, but Sue is one of the nicest people. I just talked to Sue like about 8 days before I left for Australia, 8 or 9 days. She's just such a nice human being. Forget about what a great job she did for almost 40 years. And in a world that most people can't comprehend how difficult her job was, dealing with the talent that she had to deal with and the coordination and logistics. And a lot of the times when Sue would give you a call, it was to ask you, when you were under contract with WWE, it was to ask you to do things that were generally outside of what you would normally do as a performer. Extra media, that type of thing. In addition to others, sometimes that came out of talent relations. But for me, it was always Sue. She was the one that generally, talked to me about my travel or any other appearances I have, even to this point now, whenever WWE has something that they want me to schedule or ask me to schedule, it's always Sue. And she's just such a sweet person. 40 years is a long look. 40 months in WWE can feel like a lifetime, depending on what era you were dealing with. But hats off to her. She's a sweet person. I'm sure she's going to enjoy her life outside of WWE.
You got to assume she's retiring. And if that's the case, congrats on the the rest and the break. Well deserved. I've never met anybody who didn't love Sue, and we are wishing her well here. Let's talk about a little more WWE news before we move on to, I think, what everybody was talking about last week. But the big news over the weekend, I thought, was that Vince McMahon seems to have officially listed the remaining shares that he had in TKO. Over 8 million shares, to be exact. In fact, even Nick Khan registered to sell another 234,000 shares. But the idea that Vince McMahon is seemingly moving completely away from WWE. And I saw some people saying, well, this allows him to make more money and perhaps get a better deal on some of those share prices. I get that. But the idea that he seems to have put all of these up for sale, did that strike you as him maybe trying to create a little distance himself, or am I reading too much into that?
I mean, who knows? It's such a personal, who knows? You can speculate all day long. And I've already on social media today, I've tried to stay away from it because I kind of OD'd on it on my 26 hours on a freaking plane. But, I mean, it can mean anything. And I mean, I'm already seeing people going, oh, he's going to launch a new wrestling league in Saudi. I'm just like, oh, whatever. And that may be true. Who knows? I don't know. And I don't care. It's his money.
Respectfully, if he launched a wrestling league in Saudi, he wouldn't need the money for this. And I understand that.
No, what I mean, that's what I mean. I'm just acknowledging the fact that people there's going to be rumors all over the map, and none of us freaking know.
I do want to talk about the idea of him perhaps setting up a new league, but I at least got to ask this. For him to be interested in trying to sell these other shares, the thought crossed my mind. It at least crossed my mind. Do you think there's a chance he finds a way to sue WWE and this becomes a legal matter? Maybe he tries to sue that he was forced out or some sort of nonsense. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I'm wondering, with the run WWE's on right now, why would you sell the stock right now? It feels like that thing's just going to keep climbing. It's not like he needs it to pay the freaking light bill.
Well, the TKO stock hasn't been on fire. And again, how old is Vince now? 78, 79?
Yeah, he's up there. He's 78.
You get to a point, even Vince McMahon, perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps even Vince McMahon at this stage of his life is going to, maybe he's going to go buy a yacht and sail around the world or buy an island or whatever. It's just, I don't know. It's just, to sue WWE, what would he sue them for? What would be the
he's on the outside looking in of his own creation, Eric. It doesn't seem that crazy. And you said the stock's not on fire. I'm not going to argue with you, but I will say it's up 21% this year. I mean, we're 4 months into the freaking year.
Yeah, and stock that has a stock right now. That's a pretty good run.
I mean, my gosh. Now I know if you take a year look back, it is down 5%, but I'm saying they're doing pretty well right now. They've got some momentum. And I'm just saying, if I had a bunch of WWE stock, and I don't, TKO stock, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be selling now. I'd be hanging in there. We just set records. We just had the biggest WrestleMania ever, blah, blah, blah. We got the Netflix still on the horizon, blah, blah, blah. I wondered, would there be some sort of weird conflict, or could it work against him if he didn't unass those stocks, but those shares before he initiated a lawsuit? And again, I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't have any inside information. I'm just trying to make sense of why you would sell it right now. Because I like you saw other people saying silly stuff like, oh, he needs it for bail money. Guys, the lawsuit you read was a civil suit. There's no bail money. Now, I'm not saying there might not be a federal investigation coming because the word traffic was used there. Who knows? But I'm just saying, why does he want to sell it? Like, now doesn't seem the time to me.
And conversely, I'll ask, why would he want to sue? What's there to be gained? Regain control of the company? He would be regaining control of a disaster. Why would you do that? Why would you self-destruct? Who knows? I can't imagine being that vengeful that you would take such a drastic action that would cost so much money, expose not only yourself and your family to, the further public microscope and meat grinder that goes along with it. And for what? To accomplish what? That's the part I can't wrap my head around any motivation other than I'm going to go buy a boat in an island, do laps, get some sun.
Well, I'm anxious to hear what people are thinking. If you're watching us live and you've got a question and you want to ask Eric about what we're talking about, go ahead and drop it below. We are going to be getting the questions. Before we jump into some questions, though, you brought it up, so I want to bring up one last piece of Vince business, and then we'll move on from Vince for a bit. The idea that he might start another country or not, company, not company.
Maybe he's going to do that too.
Yeah, maybe
he's going to buy the island,
right? Why not? I gotta say, Eric, I know that, none of us really know. I totally see it. I totally buy that he is not willing to let this story and this news be the last story of his life. Like, I don't think this is because I mean, let's be honest. I hate that this is the way it is right now. Maybe I don't hate it, but you get where I'm going. That's a phrase people say. If he passed away tomorrow, people would be talking about this most recent news, and that would become a huge part of his legacy. You got to think he's trying to dig out there on some level at this point. When you're a billionaire, does he need more money? No. I think at this point, Vince has got to be concerned with legacy, and it feels like maybe I could see him doing something. And we saw when he was in Saudi earlier this year, he said, "This is our home." And we know they've got the world set up over there. I don't know what the inroads are. I don't know what the possibilities are, but with, there being some companies out there that are available, even though they're not listed publicly for sale. You and I both know there are wrestling companies that can be purchased right now today. It feels like there might be a possibility. And Dave Meltzer wrote about that. He says all the key talent, he's talking about WWE, is under contract. The early losses as a startup would be significant with two major competitors that are established, and he would be going against the most powerful version of WWE that there's been. I would really see it having almost no chance of success. Vince does have the money to bid for anyone, and no matter how much people who privately, in the last few cases publicly, talk about their distaste for him and how horrified they were on the suit, it's still a business where most of the talent will go to the high bidder or the most stable company. But the latter would not be the case. I know we're not making bets on the program. I see your buzz cut. I get that. If you were a betting man, what would you put the odds on that Vince is going to start another promotion or be involved in wrestling again in another capacity outside of WWE?
I wouldn't put any money on it. I don't even gamble, but I'd just go play blackjack in Vegas instead. I wouldn't put any money on it.
Okay. Well, I would. I'm going to put some money on it. So we're going to bet a stake. We're going to bet a ribeye
in Vegas
by next WrestleMania. Yeah, a Vegas steak. There we go. A Vegas steak dinner by next WrestleMania. I say Vince is in the wrestling business.
Wow. I mean, here's where that would be good news. If that were to happen, and I really have to shift into fantasy phase right now, fantasy gear, because I just can't imagine it. But if he did, can you imagine how much money all of the wrestling news sites are going to make? We're going to make on YouTube. I mean, this is like the gift that keeps on giving. If that were to happen, back when we first started this thing, you and I talked briefly. We knew each other obviously beforehand, but that wasn't like a really great experience, at least not on my part. You had a blast, but
I had a blast.
You did. But one of my concerns was, number one, I think I had much else to say, and I wasn't convinced that, looking back in Nostalgia Wrestling was quite the powerhouse that you saw, and you were obviously right. Not just because of the success of my podcast with you, but all the others as well, including Bruce's and Tony Schiavone's and Jim Ross's and Arn Anderson's, and the list goes on, right? I didn't see it. You did. But one of my other concerns, and I expressed it to you, is like, we're going to run out of stuff to talk about.
Right.
At some point, what are we going to call this? Like, rebook 83 weeks from a fantasy booking phase or whatever. But this gift, it just keeps on giving. And I'm so grateful for it. But if Vince were to make a move like that, it's going to be another 3 years before I can consider retiring. It's going to be crazy.
Well, we're having a lot of fun here on the podcast. Appreciate you guys joining us. I want to give a special shout out to John Mardell, who gifted 40 memberships. I can't believe this is real, but he's gifting memberships here to 83weeks.com. Thanks for joining the Eric Bischoff World Order. How nice of that is it for John, man? That's awesome.
John, that's awesome, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm shifting gears here a little bit. Keep me on the tracks because I may go way the fuck off into the weeds just because of a little bit of brain fog. But, being stuck on a plane for 26 hours and having nothing to do but watch movies I've already seen or spend too much time on social media, I opted to spend too much time on social media. And I had a blast. I had so much fun. And I mean, some of the people, and obviously I had a blast with all the people that are, why are you doing this, old man? You only want to talk hate about AEW because they won't give you a job. All this nonsense. And I had so much fun fucking with those people. I mean, I was laughing like the village idiot on the plane. People looking at me, been on the plane for 5 hours and I'm giggling because the amount of insanity that's taking place on social media and the tribalism. I hate to even use that word because it's just so overused now, but
yes,
everybody knows what I'm saying. People are accusing each other of, creating tribalism. And I'm going, you people have lost your shit. This is fun. And for all of you haters out there that are trying your best to bury me, most of the time you suck, by the way, that's one of the things that puts a smile on my face when somebody's really trying to stick it to me. And it's like, what are you, 4? I look at their profile and figure out if I'm, having too much fun with a 12-year-old or what. I don't want to verbally battle, or not verbally, but battle anybody on social media that's, like 10 years old. But I'm looking at these people and these are adults. These are grown-ass people who got pictures of the wife and kids and shit in their profile video picture. It's like, it is so much fun. I am having a blast. And if you want to know why I do this, I don't hate anybody. I've told you that before. I want AEW to be successful. I want Tony Khan to be able to go, look what I did. Told you I could. I want it to grow. For the people that are friends of mine in the business, for people who I don't even know in the business, for some of the people that I got to work with in Australia, young talent coming up, that are so excited and so eager, and people like Mance Warner who are like this freaking close to being able to make a great living in a business where only about 0.5% of the people that actually attempt it can do that. I want that to be true for everybody. But if you think I'm not going to express an opinion after spent 30 years of my adult life in the industry and having achieved an enormous amount of success, some that nobody's ever been able to not only replicate, no one's ever been able to achieve. Name a promoter in the last 30 years that was able to, maybe 40 years, that's been able to outperform Vince McMahon and WWE when they were at their peak. Well, they're at their peak now, but you know what I mean. Name one. If you can name one, I'll sit back and shut the fuck up. Fact is, you can't. Name somebody else who created a brand, a storyline out of that brand that has been, for the last 20 some odd years, probably the most successful merchandise in the marketplace. NWO merchandise is still in the top 10 of all WWE merchandise 20 some odd years later. And if you can find someone that's achieved that level of success or had that much of an impact on the business, I'll shut the fuck up. Or if you can find somebody that reformatted television and brought live television on a weekly basis to the industry. If somebody did it before me, I'll shut the fuck up. But the fact is, nobody did, nobody has, and nobody will. That's why I have an opinion. And for anybody to think, because I'm not actually in the business, that somehow I shouldn't have an opportunity to, number one, express my opinion, but to number two, do so on one of the most financially successful wrestling podcasts out there. Not the most, maybe top 5. Conrad, you know better than I do. You spend more time with the numbers. Maybe top 10. I don't care. Financially very, very successful. And now this YouTube effort that we're putting forth, our YouTube numbers are growing dramatically thanks to Ant Evans and the help and work from everybody else on the Ad Free Shows team or Podcast Heat team. And besides all that, Muckerfuthers, it's just fun. I'm having a great time from my house. I don't have to get in the car and go to work, spend all day in an office doing a job I don't like. I get to work from my treehouse, 40 feet away from my garage. Freaking awesome. I get to work with people I want to work with, when I want to work with them, where I want to work with them, and how I want to work with them, and make an extraordinarily good living doing it. That to me is freedom. And I'm enjoying the freedom. Plus, y'all make me laugh. And I like to laugh. Okay, there you go. I'm done.
Not only are you doing it in your treehouse, you're doing it comfortably because you're rocking Mack Weldon, and you will be too when you try it. Guys tend to think that looking sharp means like starchy Oxfords and stiff chinos rather than effortless comfort, but it is possible to have it both ways. Mack Weldon makes timeless apparel with modern performance fabrics for guys who want to look and feel sharp without sacrificing comfort. From their light as air underwear to innovative anti-odor tees and versatile yet comfortable pants, Mack Weldon has a full range of clothes that never go out of style. I tell you what you're going to love about these. I know what everybody I've put Mack Weldon on. I know like Double J likes the shirts, but boy, the pants. These are the most comfortable, breathable pants you've ever felt. Seriously, go out of your way to try them. You're going to love the material. You're going to love the way it feels. You're going to love the way it wears. Talk about comfort. And by the way, we should also mention that peacocking is like for the birds. This is not a brand that's trying to show off with a bunch of fancy patterns. We're not trying to draw attention to ourselves. This is understated good looks for understated confidence, just classic stuff, always in style and made from the most comfortable performance materials you'll ever find. This is like performance fabric without it feeling techy or shiny. You see, Mack Weldon's clothes were designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. So it looks like regular clothes, but really it's the latest in modern comfort. Nobody else is going to know how comfortable you are. I think you're going to love it. They've got breathable underwear that keeps you dry and comfy all day. It's air knit. They've got crazy comfortable but elevated sweatpants as a part of their Ace collection. They've even got the awesome polos for this time of year with antimicrobial silver threads, meaning no gross odors, going to stay cleaner longer, making you look fresher longer during the day. They've also got ultra soft antimicrobial tees. Yeah, check it out. You get timeless looks with modern comfort from our friends at Mack Weldon. Go right now to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order when you use our code 83weeks. That's MackWeldon.com. The promo code is 83weeks. That's MackWeldon.com. And the promo code is 83weeks. Eric, Mack Weldon's the real deal, especially if you're traveling 26 hours on a plane, huh?
Dude, I got my Mack Weldons right before I left. And I don't know what I was expecting, but fortunately I had time to pack it. The most comfortable, the sweatpants are unbelievable. Like they're really unbelievable. It's not even, I don't think it's right to call them sweatpants because that conjures up an image of, baggy gray sweatpants as you wore in high school. I mean, these, not only do they look good, but they are so incredibly comfortable. And I love pullovers, hoodies. I just do. It's my go-to. I love the little pocket and all that. For the most part, they different looks and colors and all that, but the fabric, the fit, the elasticity, the way my hoodie from Mack Weldon is constructed, unbelievably comfortable. This stuff is the real deal. This is real.
MackWeldon.com. Check it out. Be sure to use our promo code 83weeks. You'll get 20% off your first order. Listen, let's talk about some in-ring news. We had some big news happen over the weekend. There was a big New Japan show in Chicago. Tickets actually sold quite well for it. And before we talk about Jack Perry, we got to talk about Jon Moxley. I felt like this was a little more under the radar than maybe I would have expected. I knew he was getting a title shot, but I don't think maybe it was presented as it was that big of a deal. And now in hindsight, I realized, boy, that was a pretty damn big deal. Jon Moxley is now the New Japan World Heavyweight Champion. And that makes him the first person to ever hold the WWE, the AEW, and the New Japan World title. And I recognize that New Japan has certainly lost a step as far as the way fans view them in the absence of stars like Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay and Okada. I get that. But Moxley, man, what a vote of confidence. I mean, as long as you and I have been keeping up with wrestling, it was a big deal to be the New Japan World Champion. And now Moxley is. What'd you think of that?
I mean, good for him. That obviously was something that was on his bucket list where he wouldn't have had to do it or chosen to do it. And he did. So if that was a goal and something that he just felt like he had to achieve professionally and was able to do it, good for him. Good for him.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about AEW in a moment, but first, I think we should at least mention the WrestleMania numbers. They came out in the Observer since you and I got together. The gate was up 78% from last year, which is just unbelievable. Last year was the record, and this crushed it. And the number, I can't believe this is real. Last year was 19,749,000. So they're saying if this really is up 78%, then the 2-night total here is $35,000. So I'm sorry, $35 million, about $17.5 million per night. Eric, you and I have talked a lot about the big gates that Nitro got and that WCW got in the Monday Night War era. And that $1 million gate always eluded you. And I know times are different and there's inflation and blah, blah, blah. But 17.5 million in a night back to back. This is crazy. Like, how is this possible, Eric?
It's mind-boggling. It's just, that's the only way I can describe it. Can you imagine 20 years ago if someone were to suggest that, hey, I think by 2024 WrestleMania going to do close to $40 million in revenue, or excuse me, was it 17 million a night?
35 million across 2
35,
nights.
Almost $40 million in revenue. That's not, is that including merchandise? I don't even know. Perhaps. Doesn't matter. But can you imagine if somebody would have said,
supposedly that's the gate, Eric.
That's just the gate?
Supposedly that's the gate. That's not counting sponsorship. That's not counting merch. That's not counting what they did at the World. I mean, this is way bigger than even we thought. If that's a real report, if that's a real number, this is even much larger than we thought. I think we all knew this is the biggest WrestleMania of all time. I don't think maybe we knew how big.
Incredible. I don't even know what to say about it. I can't wrap my head around it. It's so big.
Here's the crazy thing. Dave is freestyling here, doing some math here, some napkin math. He says 66,000 is the paid number. So keep that in mind. 66,000 is the paid number. That's per night, Eric. That would mean the average ticket price would have been $299. So by the time you factor in the really expensive ringside seats and then the cheap seats that, you see a couple of ants moving around down there, $299 is the average ticket price for wrestling. This is unprecedented.
I remember one of the first times you talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling and where it used to be and where it is today.
Right.
I'm going to go back even further. Forget about some of the recent, stars that left New Japan Pro Wrestling. Go back to the peak of New Japan Pro Wrestling, at least one of them. And one of the first times that I was invited by New Japan, by Inoki, to come to the New Year's Eve show. It did. I don't remember what the number is, so don't quote me on it. But it was like 60 or 70,000 people, which was mind-boggling to me because at that time WWE was struggling, the live shows were struggling.
Yes,
certainly WCW was not even close to WWE at that point. And I just remember seeing the Tokyo Dome just filled with people, and it just blew me away. And the way people dressed, the way people approached that event, it was very much like any sporting event. And, men wearing suits and ties first 6, 8, 10 rows deep, and women dressed accordingly. And then I asked Baijo-san, I don't remember what his first name was, but Mr. Baijo, who was really kind of like the CFO of New Japan at the time. And I asked him, what the average ticket price was. Now, we're talking about 1993, maybe, or 4, whatever. The average ticket price that night was $100 US dollars. And that blew me away. Now listen, and now look at the numbers you're talking about here.
It's unbelievable.
With twice the audience, it's just mind-numbing.
Here's what's crazy too, Eric, is this is not your typical promotion. Let me explain. If you had a super fight, this guy versus that guy, let's say it's boxing, it's MMA, whatever, other things that are promoted in arenas or stadiums or what have you. You at least know who's going to be on the card. You know what you're paying to see. You know the main event. You got to assume 80, 90% of this was sold before they knew what the main event or even any of the matches were.
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow,
It's
I didn't
just
think
the
of that.
name brand alone, 35 million. And not all of it. Listen, okay, 10 million's off. 25 million in pre-sales before you've announced anything. And when those people come, they're going to attend your convention and they're going to buy merch, and it's just nuts.
It's the power of that brand. That WWE brand has become so powerful. And this is a perfect, your point, such right on the money, man. You're right on the money with that point. And I didn't think of it that way. But can you think of, other than the NFL or maybe the Kentucky Derby, can you think of anything else that sells out like that?
Just the Super Bowl. Legitimately, just the Super Bowl. Like the
Taylor
Super
Swift,
Bowl.
maybe.
Well, but you know what you're getting. Taylor Swift's going to be here and she's going to.
That's right. That's right.
With WWE, like if you were a big Sheamus fan, well, sorry. Better luck next year. By the way, got a shout out to Sheamus. He showed up last night on Monday Night Raw. He is back in ring action. Took on our buddy who you complimented a few weeks ago, Ivar, who was a highlight for you. Man, they had a really fun match, and the crowd in Montreal ate him up. I was kind of surprised they didn't have him back in time for the Rumble and doing something at Mania, but he's ready to get going now. And you've got all these European tours coming up. Sheamus has been a missing piece of this equation for WWE. I'm glad he's back.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a pretty interesting horizon right now, doesn't he? He's been off long enough that he's like absence makes the heart grow fonder factor has kicked in. It feels fresh. And yeah, would it have been nice if Sheamus had a story starting a year ago or 6 months ago? Perhaps it would have built towards WrestleMania. Sure, that would be nice. But if I'm Sheamus right now, I'm looking towards what happens to me over the next 12 months? What am I going to be doing looking forward to the next WrestleMania? Because he's got a clear runway and he's got some support behind him. He's got a great creative team behind him now. I mean, functionally, I think WWE creative has probably never been even close to the level of efficiency and the quality of work that we're seeing now, by evidence just by what we've seen on the screen. And if I'm Sheamus, this is like a whole new lease on life. And I'm very happy for him. He's somebody that when I was in WWE back in 2019 for that cup of coffee, he was one of the first people that I started speaking to right away. And we developed a great relationship over a very short period of time. I never really got a chance to work with him the way I wanted to. Great guy, amazing talent. Can't wait to see what happens with him.
I'm a big fan too. Super nice guy. Got to meet his dad several years ago. Just an awesome fam, and really excited for him. Pulling for him to have a heck of a run here. It's hard to believe, dude. This is going to be his 17th year in WWE. That's quite a run.
Yep. And he's had enough time to heal up. He had some injuries, and like I said, his future is very bright.
It's also bright for Tama Tonga. He is Haku's son, Ming's son, and now he's a part of the Bloodline storyline. They say in life, in wrestling and entertainment, I guess everywhere, timing is everything. And this guy has been rumored as a potential candidate for WWE for years. I remember back in 2016, maybe even before that, when Shinsuke and AJ and so many others came over, a lot of people assumed Tama Tonga can't be far behind. Here he is now, and he's not just slotted in at NXT or somewhere in the mid card. Not that there's anything wrong with that. He's in one of the biggest storylines in company history. I know you're friends with Haku. How pumped are you that his son is now in WWE?
It's great to watch. Great to watch. And another young, amazing talent that's stepping into an environment that is hot as hell right now. And he's stepping into one of the hottest storylines, I think, in my lifetime. I mean, as far as the quality of storytelling, and that you look at the stars that have emerged out of that storyline over the last couple of years, year and a half, 2 years, Sami Zayn, who we're going to probably talk about more, but holy shit. Again, what a bright future this young man has. Couldn't be happier for him. And Ming, because now he gets to sit back and watch and enjoy it as a dad.
We are live, you guys, at 83weeks.com. So if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notifications bell on. We're going to go live once a week here on 83 Weeks. You may have heard Eric used to have a second podcast beside 83 Weeks. It was strictly business. It landed every week here on YouTube and on RSS. Eric is doing a second YouTube exclusive show, and this is not necessarily taking the place of it this week. We just didn't get to record 83 weeks and thought, hey, man, we can't get more current than doing it live. So if you're liking what we're doing, throw us a comment or a question below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Throw us a thumbs up. Hit that like button. It costs absolutely nothing. Come on. We've got plenty of time to get to you guys' questions as well. But before we do, I wanted to also mention, because we're talking about all the success and the people coming and going in WWE, but behind the scenes, big piece. Dan Ventrell is a guy who's been running talent relations. And before he did it here, he did it at a high level. How about for the Oakland Raiders? Yeah, the NFL. And now he's on the outside looking in. Allegedly, I think there was even 2 other folks who were in the talent relations department who are no longer there. I guess the rumor and innuendo is they're talking to folks and interviewing folks and having conversations behind the scenes. But I also know that there's been a lot of reports that guys like Natalya and Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre and even Becky Lynch have contracts that are coming up over the next handful of months. Talent relations in WWE has to be one of the absolute most stressful, worst piece of shit jobs in the entire company. And now you've got all these major talent you got to turn around and navigate and negotiate in the next few months. This is some news here. It's not what gets all the traction, but you've seen talent relations at work. Talk to me about how big of a deal this is that Dan is out.
Well, I don't know how WWE is currently structured, so it would be, silly of me to kind of speculate on any of that. But I'll go back to what you said originally, and I'm sure Jim Ross could really add to that with some credibility. I've never worked in talent. Well, I have, in the role that I was in WCW, I probably spent as much time dealing with talent issues as probably any single person other than our attorneys in some cases. It's such a thankless job. It is the worst. Certainly young, new talent that are getting their first big break. They're thrilled to death and they're happy to get an opportunity and get a contract and probably make a living for the first time in their lives in professional wrestling. So that's rewarding because you're helping people begin the next phase of their careers, or in some cases the beginning of a career. That would make you feel good, but then you got to deal with everything else. And what happens, and it's human nature, but that's what you get to deal with in talent relations. There's the relationship part of talent relations, and you have to deal with the human side of that, the jealousy, the anger, the frustration, the husband at home that's mad because you're traveling, or the wife that's home that's mad because you're traveling, and the personal issues, and the jealousy and the envy, and oh my God. Yeah, those young talents, they make you feel good. You feel like you've done something meaningful and you've helped contribute. And then you have to deal with 90% of the rest of your day, and it is thankless, but it's absolutely necessary. How it's going to affect WWE, only somebody that's actually inside can speculate. But I do think with regard to the talent that you named, look, these are established. These are the superstars of the superstars necessarily. They've been around a long time. They know the game. They have an expectation and understanding that's based on the reality within WWE currently. I'm sure those people are at the top of the pile and they're being serviced quite nicely and appropriately. I don't think there's any risk there at all. But I wouldn't want to be the person in that job. I don't know how JR did it. Don't know how he did it for as long as in that environment. I mean, WWE and work, being the middleman between Vince and talent. Oh my God. I can't talk about thankless. That's like self-flagellating.
As you look around the landscape, is this a hire that has to come from outside of wrestling, or could this hire come from inside of wrestling?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Good question, brother. Because you have an advantage both ways, right? Somebody inside of wrestling understands the landscape, understands the talent, understands the history, the backstories of not just new talent coming in or existing talent that you're negotiating with, but also knows the history and how things work and how they worked in the past. That's important. You have to be able to have a thorough knowledge of your area of the business in order to be effective. And somebody inside the industry is going to have a big advantage in that regard compared to someone from outside of the industry, because there is a learning curve. The professional wrestling business is a unique business. As huge as it is in WWE, at least, it is a very unique business with unique talent, unique circumstances, and a lot of unique challenges. So somebody inside, big advantage. On the downside, somebody on the inside probably has some baggage. Some of it really good baggage, some of it maybe not so good. Some of it deserved, some of it perhaps not deserved. So you're bringing with you a perception into a role. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's bad, but it's not always a big advantage when you come with experience. Somebody from the outside, clean slate, no relationships, no challenges, no history. There's a little bit of an advantage in people not quite knowing you as well as they think they do. That is an advantage. The disadvantage is, as I said a moment ago, it's a steep learning curve, and it's a brutal one. It is not an easy job. It is a very difficult job.
Well, we know for sure Johnny Ace won't be on the short list of candidates. And we also know that Jim Ross just re-signed with AEW. And even if he hadn't, I don't think he'd want to take on that job full time. I don't think we can bank on Carano coming back anytime soon. I know Scott D'Amore is hanging out there, but I think he's perhaps being taken care of for a certain period of time. If I had to guess, feels like that would be something that he might have negotiated. Who knows? So I'm not sure who they get here. It's not like there's a great candidate you can just put behind glass and break in case of emergency. It's such a niche thing. I'm interested to see how this shakes out, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to speculate, but there are people there like Steven Regal.
Yes.
Has respect from talent. I can't imagine there's certainly no talent I've ever met that doesn't have an immense amount of respect for Steve, because he's always been such a professional. And yeah, he had issues. He overcame those issues and has more credibility in that role as a result. And he's there. Would Steven Regal want a job like that? I don't know. But there are people there internally that could, if they chose to, take that role and probably do well with it. And particularly with the support that person would get. There would be a lot of support for whoever gets that job. And someone like Steven Regal, I think if it were me and if it was my decision or my option, I would consider someone like Steven Regal very, very highly.
Well, something else I know that you consider very, very highly. Let me just ask you this. What is in your opinion, what's the most valuable thing in the world? That's right. Tacos. No, not really. The second most valuable thing is time, right? Managing and worrying about body odor used to take up a lot of time. And if you're paranoid about smelling around midday, let me recommend Mando whole body deodorant. That's right. I can't believe this is a real thing. My wife, when we got this, I just realized I did Borat there. She could not believe this was a real thing. She tried it immediately and loved it. And yeah, you see, Mando, you think this would just be for us? She tried it and absolutely loved it. I am a big fan of this. It's effective. It's long lasting. I mean, you could actually start and finish WrestleMania Night 1, Night 2, and Hillbilly Jim's Hall of Fame induction. You'd still be smelling fine when you finished all of that 3 weeks later. And here's why. Mando doesn't cover up odor after the fact with heavy fragrances like the other deodorants. You know who we're talking about. It stops odor at the source by blocking the bacteria on your skin that's eating your sweat, which is the actual cause of BO. Now, what does this mean? It means that Mando is clinically proven to control odor up to 72 hours. That's a long time. So give yourself the precious gift of time and get yourself some Mando whole body deodorant. And right now is a special offer. New customers get $5 off Mando's best-selling starter pack when you use our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. Seriously, this has been a home run in my house. I tried it, but my wife actually, she loves it. It stays on her side so much, I had to order another one. Whole body deodorant too. Let me explain. This is not just for your pits. You can use this on your package, boys. That's right. Get down there in the grundle, your belly buttons, your butt crack, whatever you got going on, your stinky ass feet, Mando can help with that too. It's created by a doctor who saw how normal BO was just being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And now he's made sure that he's got something that's powerful enough for the toughest body odor, but gentle enough to let you use it everywhere. You don't have to worry about Mando. It's cruelty free. It's baking soda free. It's aluminum free. It's dye free. It's vegan. And it's clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. 12 hours after a shower, they did the research, and the average man's grundle is a 5 out of 10. But with Mando, the average odor level is 0 out of 10. How about that? Be a 0. Come stink less with us. It's perfect. This Mando starter pack, it's perfect for new customers. It comes with the solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice. Things like mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and you get free shipping. Now, luckily, we've got a discount code to help you get hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. Again, new customers get $5 off a starter pack. All you got to do is use our exclusive code. That equates to 40% off your starter pack when you use our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Eric, I love Mando. I know you do too. And I'm excited for us to talk a little bit about what's next for the Royal Rumble. This is a stadium show. We just talked about how big WrestleMania was. We know they've got big PLEs coming up. We're just a few months away from Backlash in France. We're going to talk about that. But there's a rumor out that the Rumble might actually be coming to Milwaukee. And I think I was shocked more about that than any news I've heard recently about locations. I just did not have Milwaukee on my bingo card, but I'm kind of excited about the idea. I think Milwaukee would eat it up. What do you think?
Yeah, the nice thing about Milwaukee, I do think they'd eat it up. Milwaukee's always been a great wrestling town, going all the way back to the days of the Crusher. Oh man, I miss those days as a young kid watching the Crusher. But it's always been historically blue collar town, blue collar city, almost a suburb of Chicago. It's only an hour drive, whatever it is. It's easy to get to. So you've really got 2 pretty good. Well, obviously Chicago's a major market, and you look at the Chicago market and Milwaukee, Milwaukee's not even that far from Minneapolis. So you got some big, dense populations of wrestling fans. And Milwaukee's right kind of smack dab in the middle of it all. Great choice. It may not be a sexy town, but it's a great town for wrestling.
I, for one, am looking forward to it. I mean, I know they've ran TV there, Raws and SmackDowns and things like that, but it doesn't feel like there's been a lot of major events there. I think there was a pay-per-view way back when, like a No Way Out, I think was there maybe that was when the NWO came over. I think that's right. And there was a Taboo Tuesday, I think there. And King of the Ring. Yeah, King of the Ring was there where Stone Cold won. But it's been a while. And so the idea that they might be coming back is interesting to me, because I just assume what that also means, Eric, is they're having these economic impact studies done. And this is a whole new ballgame. Let me explain. There are communities and municipalities out there that are now bidding for the right to not just get WrestleMania, but some other PLEs, some of these premium live events like a Royal Rumble, like a SummerSlam. It might come with tax perks. It might come with free rent. This is not something you got to play with in WCW, but certainly exciting for WWE, right?
No, we certainly didn't get the opportunity. The business wasn't at a point. WCW was certainly not at the point where we could command, even at our peak, the kind of numbers in dollars that WWE is successful with in terms of sponsorship from the cities and underwriting from the cities that we see some of these big events in. But it's amazing to see. And it's, I think, one of the big benefits of the merger. I think I predicted this would be one of the areas that the merger would probably create more opportunity than existed for WWE than it previously enjoyed, even though they had started doing really, really well. When you've got the power of Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan and their relationships within that world, now in your office, it changes things, and clearly it has.
Well, I, for one, am looking forward to it. I even saw there was a report that came out today as we're recording on Tuesday that the folks in Philadelphia are looking forward to talking to WWE about bringing WrestleMania back again. And I saw some folks in the area saying, can we get a SummerSlam next time? It was cold night one.
I did hear that a lot.
I just love that this is where we are. And people are lining up to pay WWE money, not just to see the show, but please bring it to our city. It's awesome. Nick Khan strikes again, man. Hey, let's talk a little bit about, some of the live questions that we're getting here. I want to acknowledge, we said that we had a whole bunch of gift memberships that were donated, but that all came in courtesy of our man, John McCardell. And he says, thanks to Eric, late 90s WCW got me back into wrestling. I'm NWO for life. Here's a Jimmy's crab cake on me. And he threw you $100, Eric. How nice is that?
That is unbelievable. John, thank you so much. But not only can you tell by that comment that John made that he has impeccable taste, sees true talent, sees credibility, sees honesty and integrity, which is why he's here. And if you have any doubt in your mind, look at the fact that he's putting over Jimmy's famous seafood crab cakes. Nobody that understands how good Jimmy's seafood crab cakes are, you cannot question that individual's credibility. Zero, none. John, one of these days we'll share one together. How's that?
Hey, we got to get John a t-shirt. DM us your address and your size, man. We appreciate your support here of the show. Let's do a few more questions here. Sins fan 89 or 18 rather. My apologies. Eric and Conrad, big fan from Ottawa, Canada. Any great memories from coming to Canada? What's your favorite part about going to Canada, Eric?
Here's my favorite memory would be working with Steve Austin at No Way Out in Montreal. That was without question. I've had a lot of great moments. I've had so much fun as a performer in the business, different scenes, different people I've worked with. And as exciting as all of it is, and it's so hard sometimes to compare, but I cannot think of a moment that was any more exciting for me personally and professionally than making my entrance to the ring when I had my match with Steve Austin. I mean, first of all, working with Steve was so much fun. The backstory was built in because of all the heat that, people perceived. And to a degree, at least in the beginning we had, when I had fired Steve, but we got way past all that in about a minute and a half of conversation. And once we had that conversation, that was one of the most fun things that I've done creatively. But walking out in front of that crowd and being in that ring, it was the first time I'd ever been in the ring as a performer. No, not as a performer, outside of my role as, a general manager or the head of WCW. I'm talking about in there to get physical with another talent. I don't even like to call it a wrestling match. That's why I'm having such a hard time struggling with it, because it wasn't really a wrestling match. It was just it was a stunt more than anything. But it was so exciting. The energy, I can't describe it to anybody. I can't even describe it to myself. It was just amazing. That had to be it. And that was in Montreal, Canada.
Great question, man. Appreciate you jumping on the live show here. We got a ton of questions. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. Instagram, a wrestling historian, always brings the good questions. And he wanted to know, Eric, do you remember whose idea was the West Texas Rednecks?
God, I don't. It wasn't mine. It could have been Kevin Sullivan, because people, again, just to reiterate, because sometimes context is king, but it's also lost in time, because as time goes on, it's often harder to put things like this question in context in order to be able to figure out who might have done it. But if you look back, Kevin Sullivan made a lot of great decisions, made a very vast majority of the creative decisions that took place 96, 97, 98. Yes, I had some direct influence in a few of them, but the vast majority of them I didn't. So that's why I would say first place I'd go if I had to guess, make a bet, would be Kevin Sullivan, but it could have come from anybody because there was always a lot of collaboration at that period of time. And it's sometimes hard to tell where an idea started from.
Thanks for the shout out there and the question, Instagram, a wrestling historian. I also want to shout out a new member of our New World Order clique here, if you will. Mr. KS joined up. We appreciate your support. Thank you for being a part of 83weeks.com. Here's a silly, fun question from Robert Rose. I always wanted to ask Eric, does he remember when commentary in WCW kept trying to get over Hogan's trademark Dodge Dart during his feud with Kidman? I don't remember that on commentary, but maybe it happened. Does this ring a bell to you, Eric?
Not a bit. Robert, I'm sorry, but I'm not suggesting it didn't happen, but it didn't leave an impression on me. And I think Hulk Hogan would be personally offended that you call this Charger a dart. I don't know. I know the man does love his Mopar products.
Yes, he does.
He does love his Mopar products and his Road Runners and his Challengers. He's pretty particular about those. They're like his children now. So he might be a little hot about that, but I'll tell him it was my idea. But no, I don't remember, brother. Thank you for the question.
Tristan Young was there with you in Australia, and he says, good job in Australia, Eric. I was there. And then he turned around and gifted a membership. So thanks for supporting us and coming to check us out at StarCast in Australia. And thanks for gifting a membership here. We appreciate the support.
And before I just want to throw this out there. I got to meet in person Bret Hart. I think I got his name wrong, but I just call him Bret. He'll understand. What a great guy. Made his professional wrestling debut inside of the ring. Bret's known all over the world as a cricket reporter and journalist. He covers the sport of cricket, which is one of the biggest sports in the world.
Yeah.
And just an amazing guy. There he is. He took me out to dinner. That was our deal. That he was going to show me a meal at a great Indian restaurant outside of Ballarat, Victoria, Australia, where we were at. And Bret got to make his appearance in the ring. And Bret came up to me and he had an idea of how he wanted to open up his segment. And he came up to me and he said, do you think it's okay? He was asking permission if he could use the line from Scott Hall, hey, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. I said, well, first of all, I can't give you permission. It was Scott Hall's thing, not mine. But, I think if Scott was here, he'd be cool with it. And I said, but before you do that, start it out with, hey, yo, and then lead into it. And he got to go out there and do it. He got to meet Bret Hart. Bret evidently said to Bret, he thought, Bret had a lot of experience in professional wrestling or had done it before. And Bret was so nervous about it. It was so great, but I had just one of the highlights of my trip was hanging out with Bret. So thank you, buddy.
Shout out to Bret, day one supporter here on the program. And shout out to Black Labels, who has a question for you, Eric, here. Off topic, Eric, Google says you're from Detroit. I'm from Alpena, Michigan. Any cool memories in northern Michigan? Also, do you still own the iconic leather jacket? You're one of the only two who made nationwide wrestling cool. Thank you. Yeah, tell us about Michigan. And do you still have one of those old classic Nitro leather jackets?
Not the original. I have one just like it that I use when I ride my motorcycle. But I don't have the original. I lost that one somewhere along the way. Literally left it somewhere. Couldn't find it at the end of the evening, and there it went. As far as, northern Michigan, I grew up on the east side of Detroit, 10 Mile of Gratiot. It's called East Point now. They used to call it East Detroit, but I think Detroit had such a bad brand name that they changed it to East Point. That's funny. Only if you're from there, you would know it. But my dad had friends who had a cabin. I had an uncle that had a trailer up in northern Michigan, and my dad would take my brother and I up there occasionally to, spend 4 or 5 days camping out, so to speak, and had a great time. Those are my only really memories of northern Michigan. Most of my time was spent, like I said, on the east side of Detroit.
There's a great question that we got to get to here. I'm pretty excited about what I saw on Raw last night. I don't know if you had a chance to see the whole show.
I didn't see any of it.
Well, they closed the show with Sami Zayn versus Chad Gable, and they were in Montreal, Sammy's hometown. So they were a little hot for that one. And we got to see a great video package earlier in the show that showed sort of the backstory of Gable and Sami Zayn and how Gable had been unsuccessful in his mission to defeat Gunther for the Intercontinental title. but he was able to help down at the Performance Center just in the weeks leading up to WrestleMania to get Sami Zayn over the hump, and Sami Zayn ended Gunther's streak at 666 days. And we freestyled here on the program a few weeks ago. Yeah, I really hope Chad Gable turns heel on Sami Zayn. I mean, they're modeling this after Rocky Balboa and the trainer deal, and what if it turns? And man, that would be really cool. And then when I saw they were in Montreal and that was the match, I thought, well, that might be the spot. And it wound up happening. Of course, along the way, we saw a great little interview before the doors were open where Chad Gable was working out in the ring with some tackling dummies, if you will. It's fantastic. And then we got to see the actual match. Sami Zayn steals a victory, goes over, helps up Chad Gable, dusts him off, raises his hand. Chad Gable decides, now I'll raise your hand instead. And Sami goes out to the front row to hug his dad, kiss his wife. And while he's in mid embrace with his wife, Chad Gable comes from behind and suplexes him on the floor, threw him on the table, threw him into the post, and then put on a submission move around the ring post. It was fantastic. And that's how they went off the air, getting a lot of heat on Chad Gable. I really enjoyed that they closed that way, and I enjoyed the way the show looked. John, who's watching along with us here on YouTube, 83weeks.com, says, I'd love to hear what Eric thought about the amazing one long shot of Jey Uso leaving through the crowd to Sami coming in from the front of the crowd again. There was some amazing camera creative there. I know you didn't see last night, Eric, but you've seen Lee Fitting. I think that's the fellow's name who's taking Kevin Dunn's spot, sort of running production for WWE. They've been trying a lot of new things and new shots. What did you think of what you've seen so far with the way the presentation has changed on TV?
Yeah. So again, John, thank you so much. Great question. And while I didn't see the show last night, I did see that particular shot that John's referring to on socials. I said one of the first things I saw this morning, and absolutely love it. I think, look, I'm not one of I see a lot of anti-Kevin Dunn sentiment.
I don't have that.
Media. And people, pull your head out of your ass. Grow up, be a fucking adult, learn a little bit, think a little bit, and don't be a damn sheep. Kevin Dunn, if you look at where WWE is today, hey, and don't get me wrong, Kevin Dunn and I we're friendly, but we're not friends. I haven't heard from Kevin since he left. I maybe would hear from Kevin once every 18 months. But anybody who says they understand this business or have been watching and following, the wrestling industry as a whole, if you can't recognize the massive impact that Kevin Dunn and the team that he created, it's not all Kevin Dunn, but some of the most successful people I know aren't necessarily successful because every idea they have is great. They're mostly successful because they surround themselves with really, really talented people, which, by the way, Mucker Fathers is an art form of its own. And you cannot look at the things that Kevin Dunn created, implemented, and grew when it comes to production in professional wrestling. You cannot look at that track record and look and see where WWE is today and not acknowledge and give credit to that man. Now, is this Lee Fitting has come in and he's brought a whole different set of skills and perspectives to production. And production is taking an amazing leap forward as a result, because I think there's a different mentality. And I only know this based on what I'm seeing and the consistency of new ideas creatively and in terms of production that I keep seeing over and over and over. It suggests growth. It also suggests that people are just not comfortable any longer. You've heard me say it before. One of my favorite sayings, I didn't come up with it. Somebody else said, and Mrs. B used it, comfort kills. And it can. Comfort can kill you if you get too comfortable and you're not thinking about new ideas. You're not approaching the business from a different angle or a challenge from a different angle. If you're not trying new things because A, you're too comfortable, or B, you're afraid to fail. So what do? You do what you've always done. And what do you get? Generally, what you've always gotten. This is a whole different approach, and it's a fearless approach because I don't think there's a fear of failure. And when you're not afraid to fail, particularly when it comes to creative, and you're willing to try new things, knowing some of them are going to work. Actually, a small minority of them are going to work. The majority of a new idea, once you execute it, you're either going to go, yeah, it didn't work out as well as I did. Or in some cases, it'll be, ouch, I wish I wouldn't have done that. but you learn and you move on, and you're not afraid to try something else new. That's what we're seeing now in WWE. And it's not because of how I feel about the people in WWE, some of whom, including Bruce Pritchard, is one of my best friends. It's not because of that. It's not because of my personal relationship with the company. It's certainly not because I'm being paid by them, because I'm not. I'm not even under a Legends contract. So there's no financial connective tissue between me and WWE. But what I'm seeing out of WWE that makes me so supportive of them, since it isn't about all that other stuff, despite what social media likes to think, it's because I'm seeing growth. I'm
Right.
seeing growth in an industry that I spent 30 years of my life in and would love to see it grow even more. So that when my grandson's old enough to understand that his granddad was involved in this business way back then and can even go to a streaming platform and watch it, I want to see that. For, I guess, if you want to call it selfish reasons. I want to see growth in the business for WWE, for AEW, for TNA. I had no connective tissue to TNA. I met some of the talent that works there, and I have a lot of respect for them, including Moose, by the way. I forgot to mention him early on. He was in the same segment that I was in with Mance and Josh Alexander. I want to see growth. I want to see success, and we're seeing that in WWE. That's why I'm so excited about that product. We're seeing new ways of telling stories. We're seeing production techniques that engage the audience in ways that we haven't seen ever before. I love it to death. It's awesome.
I'm wondering too, how much of this do you think is just because it's Lee Fitting and it's different than? Because I think that's a big part of it. I think for a lot of wrestling fans, a lot of WWE fans, said more specifically, WWE production and the way it's presented on TV, it's felt paint by numbers. Like we knew if we're in the middle of a match and someone gets thrown to the outside, well, here comes Michael Cole saying, he's going to throw to a break and then they're going to come right back. But now things are all different. Like this past week, we had a backstage promo and then we came to the ring and they had already joined the match in progress. I don't remember the last time I saw that. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're doing differently. And I wonder, were they doing the sense of sameness, the same thing week in, week out, because they were playing to an audience of one? If Kevin knew this is how Vince likes it, let's don't deviate, because you've seen the crazy mood swings and opinion swings of Vince where he says, we got to do it this way every time. And then the next time says, who the fuck came up with this idea? I mean, so if that's where we are, maybe out of necessity, Kevin Dunn was just, hey, we're going to do what makes Vince happy, right?
You have no idea how right you are. And I don't talk about my time in WWE other than the fact that I was there for a cup of coffee. I'm talking about as an executive director of SmackDown. Because I have a firm belief that, you work for someone, whether you have a contract, and I don't have an NDA or anything like that, but I still have respect for the company and the people in it, regardless of how it ended up for me, which was basically my fault. I couldn't adapt. I couldn't adjust. The chemistry between Vince McMahon and I just wasn't there. That allowed me to contribute the way I felt I could or hoped to. Let's put it that way. But I can tell you one of the things that I noticed first when I came to WWE in 2019, and my job description, it was a brand new job. It never existed before. It was being created for both Paul Heyman and myself. Was executive director. And the brief, not a brief description, but the general description of my job was to oversee all things related to the SmackDown brand, from licensing and merchandising to talent, creative, certainly. Anything, the relationship with Fox, although I wasn't instrumental in it by any stretch and came in very, very late in the game, really had nothing to do with it, to be honest. That was already, that had been taking place with Kevin Dunn and the executives at Fox. But my job was very, very broad. And one of the things I did know that I was responsible for the SmackDown writing team. So probably one of the first week I was there, and I'm not going to name names because some of these people are still there and it wasn't their fault by any stretch. But one of the things that I want to say shocked me, but left a big impact on me was I came in with so much enthusiasm and feeling like at least I was a fresh set of eyes because I hadn't been part of the system. And sometimes when you bring in somebody with a fresh set of eyes, even though their ideas may not be the best ideas, the fact that they're throwing different ideas on the table creates a different conversation and a writing process when you're working with a team, right? It's just a different perspective. And I came in and I, wanted to make an impression, wanted to be a part of the team, wanted to get my hands dirty. And I did to the extent that I could, because I had a very limited amount of time to work with the writing team itself because of all the other things I was doing in that short period of time. Meetings I was taking with other divisions and departments in the company, things like that. I was onboarding for about 2.5 of the 4 months I was there. I was onboarding literally. And I remember in one of the first meetings where I actually sat down and we said, okay, let's come up, let's take a look at next week's show. Let's bounce some ideas around. And I threw a couple ideas out, and there was one person in particular there that every time I throw an idea out, it'd be, oh, no, Vince would hate that. And it wasn't like this person knew Vince better than I did. It's that this person was so afraid to even explore an idea because he anticipated how Vince would react based on his tenure with the company. And he'd been there for a long time. The fear of failure that I just talked about a few moments ago was everywhere on the creative team. Now, some people expressed it differently. There were certain people there, again, not going to name names because these are people that I respect and are still there. They handled it professionally, but they understood, no, I'm not pitching that. Vince will hate that. Well, let's talk it through. No, I remember we pitched an idea like this once about 18 months ago or 2 years ago, and he hated it. When you're operating from that mindset, when you're in a creative position, you're just going to be miserable and you're not going to achieve any success. So I say all this and I give you this background to support my perspective of what happens when you bring in new people who aren't afraid to fail. It's okay to come up with a bad idea. It's okay to even execute, to try by executing an idea that people aren't really sure about. Maybe some people don't agree with, but you don't know until you try. Hopefully your odds when you're trying things are much, much better than when they're not. But if you're starting from a point where you're afraid to fail because someone's going to call you a name or publicly ridicule you in front of your peers, which I did see, and those people were affected by that. And then you expect that creative team to be creative. It doesn't work. And it didn't work. And I think whether it's Lee Fitting, Paul Levesque, Bruce Pritchard, without having to be the Vince whisperer, kind of like the horse whisperer, he spoke good Vince, probably better than most. When those people are no longer feel like they're handcuffed or afraid, fucking game on. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Well, fucking game on in our live questions. If you got a question for Eric, drop it below. We've got tons of questions about AEW. We are going to get there. I can't believe this is a real thing, Eric, but OJ Simpson passed away since you and I recorded recently. And there's been lots of discussion and talk about that, including the idea that they actually discussed once upon a time doing an appearance for OJ at WrestleMania. Bruce and I have talked about it. And then recently another former writer from WWE posted about it on Twitter. And I know that you guys had a little fun with that. There were some tape vignettes, I think, when Bobby Eaton was running around with William Regal and they were in the neighborhood where the murders happened, and Bobby just stumbled across a knife and glove and then just threw it in the bushes. Some silly stuff that maybe doesn't hold up and wasn't that classy in hindsight. But was there ever a discussion you know of between OJ's people or WCW about doing anything with OJ? Because that seems crazy. And our man Greg Jacobson asked the question here. Did any of you fellas ever meet OJ Simpson? Did you ever have any sort of discussion or interaction at all with OJ?
No, never. That would have never happened. By the way, when the infamous car chase took place, and the Bronco is going to be auctioned off, by the way, Conrad.
No thanks.
You're a car guy.
No thanks.
But when that incident happened, and of course, I was in Australia when the news broke that O.J. Simpson had died. Of course, all I saw was that, famous Bronco car chase footage. I was watching from Shaquille O'Neal's living room with Shaquille O'Neal and Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart.
Wow.
And some member and Shaquille's dad and a couple of his friends. And we stopped. We were there to shoot a promo with Hulk and Shaquille, because Shaquille was going to be involved in Bash at the Beach with Hogan and Flair. And we went down to shoot some vignettes, and that's when that whole thing went down. And I remember just sitting, dropping everything. Camera crew was there. We just shut down. And we all watched that car chase, a lot of it, not the whole thing, but we watched a lot of it together, and we were all in shock. So that, and I watched the trial closely. There's no way ever we would have done anything with OJ, certainly. And as you talk about that scene with Steven Regal and Bobby, I regret doing that. I don't remember it specifically, but obviously I did it, allowed it to happen. And I feel pretty shitty about that. That was a bad choice on my part.
Well, a good choice is to support our sponsor, Manscaped. They're day one sponsors here on the program. And boy, they're doing something really important that we want to talk about today. Yes, today's episode is brought to you by Manscaped. But did you know that one man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer among men that are aged 15 to 35. And with April being the National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, well, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. Visit manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early signs of cancer. And as always, you can use the promo code 83weeks for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. This is a big deal here. Listen, we all know somebody in our life who's been affected by cancer. My dad, for instance, has beaten, thankfully, prostate cancer several years ago. And well, with this in mind, I want to remind you can perform simple routine self-checks at home while enjoying the Manscaped products that you use every day, like the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra has two interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, a standard one to take a little off the top, and the new foil blade to go smooth and sleek. It's also got dual LED spotlights. You'll get some better visibility. And if you don't like making a mess, don't worry. This thing's waterproof, meaning you could do it in the shower or the bath or the ocean or wherever. It also goes wherever you go. It's got a cool travel lock feature and wireless charging capabilities. And in addition to providing the right tools and solutions for comfortable and easy grooming, Manscaped is committed to raising awareness and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families that have been impacted by testicular cancer. And that's why they're donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society. So let's help save some lives and some balls by going over to manscaped.com/TCS and share their funny and educational check yourself video. While you're at it, grab 20% off and free shipping when you use our code 83weeks. Because like a famous American philosopher once said, take care of your mentals, your balls, and your chickens. So, Eric, listen, we got to talk about AEW, and I know that's what everybody is tuning in for us to talk about. But before we talk about the footage from All In, I wanted to ask what your reaction was to the Will Ospreay promo. As I understand it, Triple H made an appearance on the Pat McAfee show leading up to WrestleMania, and there was some discussion about all the new signings and free agents that had landed on the AEW side of things. And Triple H said something along the lines of, if you're looking to work less, then I'm glad I didn't pick you and you don't work here, whatever it is. I'm glad. His idea was, you got to love the grind. This is a grind, blah, blah, blah. And I guess perhaps that ruffled some feathers because certain people took offense. Maybe one of those was Will Ospreay. he came out with Renee Paquette on the stage on AEW television last week and cut a promo. And I'm not sure that Renee knew exactly what he was going to say, because the minute he started talking about the only reason you have the job you have is because you were grinding on the boss's daughter, it's a Triple H shot in regards to Stephanie. It looked, again, maybe this is her doing her job, or maybe she was legitimately uncomfortable, but that's certainly the narrative that the internet ran with, that, oh, you can tell she's uncomfortable. And listen, part of me thinks that's just old school Monday Night War. We're going to jab back and forth. But the other part says, wait a minute. Didn't Edge just open the show a week ago saying, let's get over this WWE, AEW stuff. Let's all get together. Like, let's all be nice. Like, let's love wrestling. Like, that was a week prior to this, Eric. What the hell happened?
And isn't it Tony Khan is always complaining about tribalism and talking about hate between AEW and WWE, and they thrive off the hate and it's a commodity or some bullshit? Look, I didn't see the Triple H comments. I was going to ask you, and I'm guessing you didn't see it either, but do you know if Paul Levesque mentioned Will Ospreay by name?
I don't think he said it by name.
All right. So it was Will Ospreay taking it personally, even though he wasn't mentioned. And I'm not going to criticize Will for that. I don't know Will Ospreay. I am super impressed with what I've seen of him so far. Super impressed what I feel his potential could be. I'm not sure he's going to realize it in AEW because nobody else that's come in there has. But he's an amazing talent and has amazing potential. And if he took it personally, I understand that. It's human nature. You can't criticize someone for being human. I kind of wish he would have been a little more creative. If you're going to take a shot at someone, I'm going to just set aside the whole issue of even acknowledging the competition for right now. But if I'm Will Ospreay and I'm new to this market, as he is, and I'm trying to build a following, which he is, and he's going to need to because he doesn't have one, because AEW doesn't really have one. Not the following they want to have. Let's put it that way. The last thing I want to do is take a shot at Paul Levesque coming off the massive success of WrestleMania, the undeniable critical acclaim that WWE is enjoying for their creative and how quickly they've turned it around in such a short period of time, being a year or two, year and a half. The last thing I would say is, well, the only reason the guy's got his job is because of anything, especially the shot at Stephanie. Look, I get it. There are times when I've popped off when I wished I hadn't, or when I've popped off and wish I would have just been better at it. This is probably a time that perhaps Will felt justified in popping off, but hopefully wishes he was just a little bit better at it. Because if you're down here and you're punching way the fuck up, if you need binoculars to try to hit the chin you're punching up to, be good at it. Don't say something childish, particularly that everybody looks at and hears and goes, really? Really? You know, Paul Levesque's been in the business for what, how long? The success that he's achieved as a performer, what he's learned and what he's accomplished. And it's not like Paul Levesque and I are best friends. It just is what it is, folks. Unless you're a complete fucking moron and you're so beyond yourself that you can't see things correctly, if you can't look at what's happened under Paul Levesque's leadership over the last year and a half, or however long it's been now, then there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to matter to you. So just move along. But look, popping off's one thing. Just when you're punching up, man, be good at it. If you have to do it, be good at it. Because otherwise you look kind of low rent. And there's no reason for a guy like Will Ospreay with so much potential to do that kind of self-inflicted damage.
Kenny Omega has proven to be a real one. He's been playing video games on his Twitch channel and just openly talking about a lot of stuff that I didn't expect, including him saying, I shouldn't be an EVP. I'm not a good EVP. I'm a terrible EVP. I don't have any power. I'm just, I should just, I don't belong as an EVP. I thought him just sort of falling on his sword like that and saying, "Hey guys, I'm a wrestler," I thought was really, really interesting. And he also said, in talking about the silliness that CM Punk brought up of his dog Larry and the whole brawl out thing, he made some sort of tongue in cheek reference, he being Kenny, to saying it was his job as EVP to keep Larry the dog safe out of brawl out. But he was also sort of defending fighting in locker rooms, saying that, hey, this is common. These are professional athletes in a professional sports and competitive spaces. People, this sort of thing happens. I was really impressed to see Kenny Omega come out and say that. And I know we want to send him our best wishes. It looks like he's going to have surgery on the diverticulitis after all. Said he's feeling pretty good, but it's still pretty sensitive to this touch. And if he were to take a major blow to the stomach, it could be a really bad circumstance and situation.
Hey, can I interject just for a second?
Yeah.
To that point, you remember my incident about a year ago or whatever it was?
Yes.
Where I ended up in a hospital, almost died twice, had to get life flighted to a hospital where they had my blood type because my local hospital ran out and I was crashing. I didn't have diverticulitis, but I had something very similar. Now mine was self-inflicted. It wasn't because of all the fiber. I overdosed on fiber, basically, is what I did. But that diverticulitis is serious shit. Probably shouldn't have used that term. It is a very, very serious condition. So I can relate in a way. I can relate to what Kenny Omega is going through and the surgery that he's contemplating. It's not pretty, and it's not going to be a pleasant thing. So much empathy towards Kenny Omega. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean
No, go ahead.
I just want people to understand how serious diverticulitis is.
Chat me up. What did you think about Kenny's comments about he's cool with CM Punk? He never wasn't cool with CM Punk. He sort of made fun and said, "Hey, it's my job to keep that dog safe. I'm an EVP." And, listen, fighting in the locker rooms, it happens in sports. What say you, Eric?
It's the most honest adult thing I've heard out of AEW in months. And it adds to his credibility and his character and respect because he's being honest. And he had fun doing it in the process. And the fact that saving a dog, in my opinion, puts him very high on my list of people that I want to meet and say hello to. I get it. But in all of the commentary and the reactions, and even Tony Schiavone, and I love Tony. He's a great dude. We're friends. But that was Kenny Omega's comments were the most adult comments I've heard anybody in AEW say publicly in a long time. Good on him.
Yeah, I thought the same. I thought, man, what an honest answer. And well, let's talk about a few more pieces of AEW business. We'll do some questions, and then we'll get to why everybody's here. We're going to talk about the Brawl Out Fallout, or the All Out. We'll get it right. The Wembley Fallout with Jungle Boy. Mercedes Moné went on social media last week and promoted herself as appearing on Dynamite. Of course, she never actually appeared in front of the live crowd. It was a taped promo. And in that promo, the backstage segment, as it was revealed that she's not going to be wrestling this weekend at the AEW Dynasty show. I think a lot of people were still thinking, well, they'll add her a match in there. And it's not happening. They're going to instead wait and have her make her first match, be it Double or Nothing in Las Vegas. Did you think some people were saying online that may have been a bait and switch to say that she'll be appearing on the show? She did technically appear on the show. She just wasn't in front of fans. And I'm kind of shocked that she's not wrestling on pay-per-view this weekend. What did you think of the announcement? Did you consider that a bait and switch? And would you have had her wrestle before the May pay-per-view?
I wouldn't have had her wrestle before the May pay-per-view. I would have actually tried to build her up in a way to make her interesting and compelling. Right now, I predicted. I was asked. It's not that I came out and started throwing my shit around just hoping that somebody would be interested. I was asked the question months and months and months ago. Do you think Mercedes Moné will have any impact in AEW? And without even taking a deep enough breath to express the one syllable answer to that, it was no. She's not. She hasn't, and she won't. And that's self-inflicted. It has nothing to do with her potential or what she's capable of as a talent. It's the environment she's in. It is dysfunctionally creative. It is dysfunctional creatively. There is a lack of vision. It's just impossible for anybody to show up and have an impact or move the needle or change the game or whatever euphemism you want to use, metaphor, whatever the fuck it is. At this point, it doesn't matter. They can do anything they want to do with her, and it's not going to matter. It's over. They blew it. She's just going to be, what is it? What's Paige's name? Saraya?
Yep.
Oh, that was going to be a big thing. Oh, the women's division is going to be, this is it. Game changer. Really? What have we seen so far? Absolutely nothing. 2 months from now, you'll be looking at the same scenario for Mercedes. Not because of her. Or maybe she's part of it. She could be part of the problem. But the real problem is there is just no fundamental understanding of how to build a wrestling company for television in this country at AEW. If there is, they're hiding. They're in the witness protection program.
Let me ask you, did you see after last week's television, it was last week's Wednesday show. I think it was Wednesday. Perhaps it was Saturday night, but there was a moment where Tony came out and addressed the live crowd, and people started saying he was having a meltdown. I didn't perceive that to be a meltdown. Do you think at this point, just the name Tony Khan becomes Pavlovian to a certain section of fans online?
No, Tony shoots himself in the foot every time he opens his mouth. He's building the brand. Every time, he's still doing it. He's still living in this fantasy where he thinks he's in some 2024 version of the Monday Night Wars. Dude, you're not. First of all, it's not a war. You're not competing in any meaningful way outside of whatever you think you're competing with in your head. It's a fantasy. And it's just Tony. I don't know how else to say it. If he hasn't learned by now that coming out and punching so far above his weight is going to backfire, then he's never going to learn. He just won't. I mean, he's still doing it. A couple years ago, what started this whole Eric hates AEW bullshit was because I came out on 83 Weeks and I said, Tony, shut the fuck up and wrestle. Just shut up and wrestle. Quit comparing yourself. Quit putting down WWE when they're stomping a mud hole in you in every possible measurable way. Quit doing it until you're actually competing or willing to go head to head. Shut up and wrestle. Because the more you compare yourself to WWE, Tony, the more you try to take shots at WWE, Tony, unless you're getting successful or growing your business, you're going to look like a moron and you're going to lose the goodwill that you have. I said this 3.5 years ago or whatever it was, 2 years ago. I predicted what we're seeing today would happen if Tony continued to punch so far up above his weight. Every time he does it, it backfires. And this is not me hating on Tony. I don't hate Tony Khan. With the little bit that I've interacted with him, I think I would like him personally. He's just horrible at the wrestling business and doesn't have an understanding of television in any way, shape, or form, or how to build a brand. He's doing everything exactly wrong. For a guy who wasn't going to make the same mistakes WCW made, fuck. He's making WCW in the late 90s look like a Fortune 100 company.
Hey, let me stop you right there. I do want to talk more about that because I have a theory that I really do believe this. I think on some level, Tony wanted AEW to look more like ECW and less like WCW. And I understand why people immediately make the comparison because there's more money behind it. It's well funded. It's on a Turner channel. Even the name Dynamite sounds like Nitro. Like, I get it. But when you hear Tony talk about his wrestling fandom, he always talks about when his dad took him to the ECW arena, and he just holds ECW in such high regard. And I can't help but wonder, had he leaned more into that and less into the WCW style of presentation and the roster and all of that, do you think this could have looked or felt a little differently? Or is this all just, hey, he grew up reading the Observer, so he's making the type of show that he thinks Dave likes, and maybe not everybody else likes it?
You ask a couple of different questions there. You made a couple of different points. So let me start at the end. I think Dave Meltzer's influence over Tony is there.
Yeah.
And I think it's undeniable. And anybody that knows the people involved and knows what's going on behind the scenes, to deny that is to deny reality. And people tend to want to do that a lot. So have at it. I don't give a fuck. I believe what I believe. So I didn't say I know what I know. I just believe what I believe because I'm smart enough and been around the industry long enough and know the players, at least regard to Dave, well enough. I absolutely believe there's a significant influence. Maybe not on a day-to-day basis, but a significant influence. And it's horrible. I used to say, whatever Dave Meltzer thinks is the right way to go, do 180 and you're probably going to be right. The guy has absolutely, talk about no fundamental understanding of the wrestling industry. He knows the history of it better than probably anybody. And if he would stay in his lane, he would be an asset to the industry, I believe. But Dave tries to impart his broader knowledge of how to get people over and what's good for television and what works and doesn't work on people. And some people, unfortunately, people like Tony, buy into it. And I think in Tony's case, based on things that I've heard him say or read him say, I should say, to be more clear, he was very much impacted by ECW. And that's going to have an influence on you, just like AWA had an influence on me. The style of wrestling, the general presentation in that time had a big impression on me. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when the essence of your question was, could it have been differently? Absolutely. And that's the part that pisses me off.
Yeah.
That is the part that pisses me off more than anything. And it's not about me hating Tony. It's not about me hating AEW. And for God's sake, you fucking idiots, it's certainly not about me hoping people lose their jobs. Fucking clowns. It's about a missed opportunity. And he was there. Tony had it. If he would have come out and said something like, I'm not suggesting he should have said this, but something like, you've got WWE, they're great. If that's what you like, they're great. But this is what we're doing over here. And we support them, but we're doing this over here. Accentuate the difference and the alternative nature of what you're about to present by putting over the 800-pound gorilla, not by trying to chop him down. Because you're immediately taking that audience and turning them either immediately against you or subconsciously against you. Because you're basically telling them you shouldn't like what you like. That ain't how you get over, brother. That's not how you get your brand over. That's not how you maximize the good fucking will that you were gifted with, because you came up with this idea to launch AEW at an absolutely perfect time. There could not have been a more perfect time than to launch AEW and Dynamite than October or whatever it was of 2019. Fucking perfect. The audience wanted an alternative. But Tony came out of the chute throwing fucking hand grenades. Wouldn't get in the fight. Wasn't about to go head to head. But man, he didn't shy away from cutting down WWE. And by default, the audience that watched them. It's just, it's mind-boggling to me. What's even more fucking mind-boggling to me is he's still doing it. His business is cratering. Okay, cratering is too strong of a word. His business is deteriorating at a rapid pace. And I don't give a fuck about Wembley because it's an outlier. Your television ratings are deteriorating. Your live event business, well, you don't really have a live event business other than your live TV production, Dynamite, Rampage, Collision, whatever. The numbers are right there for the world to see, Tony. Everybody sees it, evidently, but you. Wake the fuck up while you still can. Because this approach of throwing rocks at WWE and talking about how these companies hate each other, you don't think that coming from you, Tony, that that's not going to incite more of the tribalism that you so desperately complain about? You're fucking creating it. And you're blowing what's left, and there's very little left. Don't believe me? If you're listening, go to Wrestling Inc. today. Go to Wrestling Inc. and look at some of the comments on anything Tony Khan posts. 85% of them are way more negative than anything I've ever said. Yes, you get your small handful of supporters, but that audience is getting smaller and smaller and smaller in social media. Ant Evans on Wise Choices, we took a pretty good look and deep dive into the last 6 months of AEW's YouTube performance. It's crashing and burning. This is like fucking watching Olympic cliff diving. And he's still doing it. That's the part that just, I'm beyond disappointed. I'm not going to, I try really hard. I look for positive things to say. Like, I'm excited about the Motor City Machine Guns potentially coming to AEW. Part of me is excited because they're really talented guys. They're really good guys. I've had a chance to work with them. Nothing but a ton of respect. But at the same time, I'm going, those poor fuckers. They're just, I hope the money's good. And that's a common thing that I hear.
Well, let's talk about the money, because maybe there's some people who are looking to make a little more money. It's come out thanks to Cassidy Haynes over at bodyslam.net that the Motor City Machine Guns, who recently departed TNA, are probably going into AEW. They've had a really strong tag division over there since day one in AEW. And I, for one, I hope that Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin are about to make more money than they ever have. Long overdue. They've been a great tag team for what feels like forever. I've been watching these guys for like 20 years. And I got to assume whatever their new contract is, it's probably going to be the best of their career. Even if we don't always love their creative, I'm happy those guys are headed to AEW. How about you?
Well, for the money, yes. For the financial security and the opportunity that it provides them and their family to secure their futures, absolutely. But not for anything else, because that's all it is. There is, look, it's, again, if you can point to me anybody that's come in to AEW, look, MJF had a stellar growth spurt. It's not fair to call it a spurt. Tremendous growth as a character, as a performer, in every measurable way. Now, he's injured. It is what it is. I know there's speculation as to whether or not he's coming back to AEW. I'm going to let that live wherever it lives. I'm not going to comment on that. It's not my job, not my desire. But you look at all of the, from Miros to, I mean, everybody that's come in from WWE that were established stars, and what's happened to their careers. They're making a lot of money, and I'm happy for them. But that's where it ends. It's a fucking career killer. Now, if you're on the downside of your career, or if there's other things about AEW, like the schedule, which I absolutely would understand for talent, especially, we talked about Will Ospreay. Evidently, there's some situations in his family life that make this situation ideal for him. God bless him. And Tony for creating that opportunity for Will Ospreay to make the amount of money that Will Ospreay is reportedly making and not have to choose between his family and his job. I'm nothing but respect for that goodwill from Tony and creating that opportunity. Goodwill is not the right word. Creating that opportunity for talent. But that's where it ends. That's all it is a financial. It's sharing money. Tony is sharing his wealth. He's not building careers.
Perhaps some guys are looking to build their careers. There's been a little discussion, a little rumor that popped up last week that WWE is interested in Hook. Taz's son, who's been the FTW champ and is currently programmed with Chris Jericho. He's apparently caught the eye of some WWE guys. I assume that he's on his first contract and he was starting wrestling when he signed with AEW. So I can't imagine it was huge money. I have no inside knowledge. I don't know. I'm just saying, as with everything else in sports, like in the NFL, you work through that rookie contract, you make your big money on that second contract. I could totally see Hook in NXT. What do you think? Do you think, I mean, and is it a challenge since Taz is still with AEW? Would that be difficult for Taz or for Hook?
I know Taz well enough to comfortably be able to say, fuck no, it wouldn't create a problem. Will it create a problem for Tony? I don't know.
Right. That's what I meant.
Will Tony have an issue with it? Your guess is as good as mine. Taz won't. I don't know Hook. I don't know him as a person, so I can't honestly have an opinion. I wouldn't think so. And fortunately, Hook's got a father who understands the business, has been through it in every way, shape, or form, understands business, and knows how to make the right decisions. So I suspect Hook, by virtue of proximity, has some of those same feelings and perspectives. And I, for one, hope, because I'm friends with Taz. I like Taz. And I hope as a father that Hook gets the fuck out of there as fast as he can. And if he's got an opportunity at NXT or in WWE in any way, shape, or form, take that motherfucker.
Well, listen, I hope for sure that Hook gets paid. I think he's probably more than earned his money with this run. I assume that dude's selling a ton of merch. He connects with a younger audience. I've got friends of mine who are my age, but they have young teenage kids. Their favorite AEW wrestlers are Orange Cassidy and Hook. So even if you're listening to this and you're like, well, he's all right, but maybe it just ain't for you yet, bro. The presentation is working for a lot of young folks. And I'm hoping he gets paid and he gets a big fat check, because as you and I have learned, Eric, it's not just how much you make, it's how much you save. And that's why we are proud to talk to you today about Rocket Money. And I got to tell you guys, I help people save money for a living. So when we first got Rocket Money as a sponsor here on the show, I thought, well, listen, I'll try it, but I mean, it's not gonna be able to save me any money. I'm really on top of the ball here. Turns out I was wrong. Yeah, my wife and I, we've signed up for different services that are just automatically debiting our credit card that we forgot about. And it's happened to you too. It turns out like nearly 75% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. And I thought before I did Rocket Money, I thought, I don't know, I got like 5 or 6. No, it's like triple that. I was blown away between the streaming services, the fitness apps, the delivery services. It was like never ending. But now, thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones I forgot about. Maybe the most egregious is my wife and I both signed up for a streaming service, but we watch TV together. Never had we ever logged into her account. Mine was set up on the Apple TV, and that's just what we watched. Well, it's gone now. No more duplication. No more wasting money. Think about that. We were working for this money, paying taxes on it, and then just giving it away. If you've been trying to save money and it feels like your bank account is stuck, Rocket Money is what you need to try. It worked for me. I found that I had forgotten about more than I care to admit, more than a dozen we had totally forgotten about. It's a personal finance app, Rocket Money is, that will help you find and cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions. They'll monitor your spending, and they can even help you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, you have full control over your subscriptions, and you get a clear view of your expenses. You can see all of your subscriptions in one place. So if you see something you don't want, Rocket Money can help you cancel it in just a few taps. You're going to love how the dashboard shows you this month's spending compared to last month's, so you're able to stay on top of your spending habits. Plus, they'll even help you create a custom budget to keep that spending on track. And maybe that's Mrs. Thompson's least favorite part. Rocket Money will even help you negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. Yeah, check it out. All you do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. They're doing all the customer service work for you. Rocket Money now has over 5 million users, and they've saved those folks over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members an average of up to $740 a year when they're using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions right now by going to rocketmoney.com/83weeks. That's rocketmoney.com/83weeks. rocketmoney.com/83weeks. So listen, before the break, we talked about Jungle Boy and we talked about Hook. Let's talk about the footage. And I know you talked about it last week here on the program. You jumped on Wise Choices, our YouTube show that's exclusive here at 83weeks.com from Australia. And if you missed that and you're watching our live feed now and you've got a question for Eric about the footage, drop it right now. We are going to take your questions at the end of this segment about all that. Hook was standing right there for the whole thing. And thankfully, so was Chris Hero, and so was Samoa Joe, and so many others. But we saw the footage, and it looked like Jack Perry's coming back from his match. Samoa Joe and Punk getting ready to go to their match. Punk makes the approach. You see him chatting with him. You see Paul Turner on the left. You see Jerry Lynn right there. And the minute Jungle Boy goes to pull his hair up, Phil goes on the attack. And quickly, after a strike, tries to grab a hold on him. And before you know it, Jerry Lynn and Chris Hero and Samoa Joe and everybody's involved. And I know that there were a lot of people who were saying, well, we heard from Tony Khan that he was attacked and he was scared for his life. We didn't see that footage. My understanding is it's the same clip. When Punk goes to the right off camera, I guess that's where Tony Khan was. And that's where Chris Hero sort of corralled him and helped pull him out of there, he being Punk. What do you make of all this now that you've had a few minutes and a few days to marinate on it? Not only did we see it, but the announcement was made in between night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania. So if they were looking to get people talking, they did.
Oh, did they?
I kind of freestyled and thought, man, they're going to just have fun with this. Like when Shawn Michaels teased that Bret Hart was coming back on Monday Night Raw right after the screw job, and it was a little person in a Bret Hart mask. I just thought, okay, they're going to go over the top with some silliness and making an angle. And they didn't. They just presented the footage and then tried to say, and that's the reason the Bucks were off their game that day against FTR. And that, I guess, is to set up the pay-per-view this Sunday in St. Louis.
That's because they didn't get a chance to pray. He left that part out. That was part of what threw them off. That,
you know what? Yeah, okay. That's fair. Let's go ahead and we'll post what Tony Khan, there's an interview that Tony Khan just did, and we've got an actual statement from Tony about his decision to air the footage. And so I think our crack producer, Dave Silva's got that for us. He is defending it here, he being Tony Khan. I think it made a lot of sense. First of all, the Young Bucks FTR ladder match is coming up at AEW Dynasty for the World Tag Team Championships. This is the 4th chapter in FTR Young Bucks. I believe they're the 2 greatest tag teams in wrestling, the 2 very best on the planet. The last time they wrestled, Young Bucks FTR 3, was at Wembley Stadium, AEW All In. A lot happened that day. Those guys at one point, they were the 3rd match on the pay-per-view. And at one point, it looked like they were going to have to be called up and they were going to wrestle the first match. They ended up going on in the spot they were in, but the Young Bucks said the whole day, everything that happened, it affected their mental preparation. They weren't able to pray before the match. They were very stressed out. They slipped on the banana peel, lost the match, and they blame FTR and what happened at Wembley Stadium. In hindsight, that's why they refused to shake FTR's hands. We've seen the Young Bucks change a lot. We saw them get really dark during the retirement run of Sting. They've only gotten darker and more twisted. That's why they felt like they should play the tape. It was fascinating to see after the tape played, the reaction Jack Perry got at New Japan. He got the reaction of a superstar. That is not altogether unexpected, and it's something very interesting. Perhaps a side effect of this. Jack Perry, already a big star in wrestling, really the way the crowd connected with him in Chicago, that was interesting. It leaves a lot of intrigue going on into AEW Dynamite and AEW Dynasty. So, yeah. Eric, there's the official response. Tony Khan says it was a good idea. Your response?
Tony Khan is the reason AEW is in the shape it's in, and that statement just exemplifies it better than anything I could say. I mean, FTR3, are you fucking kidding me? You've just booked them for the fourth time because you can't think of anything better. There is no story. That whole excuse or the premise, the theoretical premise that we're talking about here, that the Bucks blame FTR for everything that happened that day. What the fuck? What? I'm sorry. Does that make a lick of sense to anybody? It surely doesn't to me from a storyline point of view. It certainly doesn't me from a reality point of view. I didn't see them anywhere in the shot. Did you?
No.
What the fuck? It's mind-numbingly stupid and void of any creative. I mean, that's what this was. This was Tony trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Mm.
There ain't no making chicken salad out of this chicken shit. It just sucked, and it was a horrible decision to show it. It's not getting anybody over. Jungle Jack Perry's a superstar? In what reality is that? Show me. Because how many people were in New Japan, do you know, at that event?
I'm off the top of my head. I'd say 6,000 and change or so.
Okay, that's a good audience for New Japan. I'm sorry. I just, it's hard because I actually, you know what's hard, Conrad? Is I'm actually holding myself back. I'm actually trying to give a measured response. And it's getting more and more and more difficult because I don't want AEW to fail.
Can I tell you something you're not going to believe?
It's going to keep happening over and over and over until somebody wakes up. I mean, just build a story, for God's sake. You've got people around you that could help you. Just learn how to write a story. Get like stories for dummies or something and read it. It's just,
I think in a weird way, this Jack Perry character has been influenced heavily by the loose cannon Brian Pillman, which was something that you helped create. You see his presentation there from New Japan over the weekend. He showed up in Chicago at the pay-per-view wearing a leather jacket draped in the Chicago flag. And he's got guys who look like they're right out of some ECW vignettes from 96, 7, and 8 in full battle gear and riot gear and SWAT gear. But when he drops that flag, the leather jacket's been customized on the back to say Crimea River. And I couldn't help but watch that and think, okay, maybe they're trying to get some connective tissue. There is an AEW ladder match between FTR and the Young Bucks. And that in and of itself is interesting. I don't know what wrestling politics are, but I just want to remind everybody, in a ladder match, you don't have to have a discussion where you convince someone to get pinned or submit. You just get to climb a ladder. And it makes me wonder, what are the odds you think we see Jack Perry interfere and cost FTR the match and saddle up with the Young Bucks? Do you think that's where this story's going?
it's pretty simple, so probably. But again, who's getting over more? Ain't Jungle Jack Perry. Jungle Jack Perry. Ain't going to be no superstar, Tony. You're getting Punk over. When I was in Australia, I was talking about this again with some people who are going to remain unnamed and unprovoked. First of all, they're big fans of the show. Shout out to you guys. You know who you are. But almost simultaneously, I said, who's going to benefit? Why would you do that? CM Punk. You're getting CM Punk. CM Punk has more equity now than he has ever had at any time in his career. He's blown by his peak, that being his original run in WWE. He's blown by that. Thanks to this stupid shit. Tony Khan is doing a better job of getting CM Punk over in WWE than WWE is. I mean, it's incredible. But hey, you convince yourself, Tony, and all 800,000 of your loyal viewers every week that CM Punk's a superstar.
We actually have the ratings in there, Eric, if you want to take a look at those.
I
WrestleMania,
haven't seen anything, so that'll be great.
I believe Raj Giri is reporting that Rampage over the weekend did 295,000 viewers. I know that's the Friday night show, but still
295,000.
Yes,
look, we're approaching that. I did a YouTube show on my phone in Australia with almost that many viewers. What the fuck?
The ratings are
Eric hates Tony Khan, Eric hates AEW. That's why these numbers are what they are. No, folks. Okay, enough. I can't talk about it anymore.
It's wild to me. I mean, I can't really put my finger on exactly what the craziest piece of all is, but I do know that you mentioned Tony Schiavone earlier, and I wanted to give you a chance to respond to Tony's comments because he said it on our show that actually is coming out tomorrow on Wednesday. But a lot of the reporters in the internet wrestling community, they have access to ad-free shows. They know you can get our shows early and ad-free at adfreeshows.com. So I asked Tony, I said, Tony, you kind of became a meme this past week. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I wanted to give you a chance to respond. And I wanted to just play that clip for you now because he does make a comparison to AEW and WCW. And I wanted to give you a chance to respond because I know you hold Tony in high regard, but I wanted you to at least have a sense of what Schiavone was thinking. Here we go.
My facial reaction to what happened was my facial reaction trying to put more heat on the Bucks for being assholes within the storyline itself.
Right.
I did not have any reaction to the footage we saw because I don't give a damn.
It's not like it was new for you.
No, that's right. So what? Fucking what? So I was not upset at the promotion. I was not upset at Tony Khan. I was not pissed off about what we had shown. I was trying to be fully in the moment of the angle, which is the Bucks bitching about FTR, not wanting to shake their hands and getting fucked around and everything. Right. That's what I was doing. But of course, everybody wants to create their own story, and that's fine. That's what social media is about. Social media is about idiots coming together and trying to come up with their own ideas. So maybe I was still upset about Bug. I don't know, but I didn't give a shit about the footage and still don't. Show it all you want. Okay. Don't give a shit. I'm sincere when I say I don't care. I don't care. It has no impact on my life. Okay. Some people are saying, oh, the footage that you were showing is like the finger poke of doom moment for AEW. Well, you know what? That's what you want it to be because you want to see us fail. And there's no way, because I was in both companies, there's absolutely no way that you can compare us to WCW. You can't. You may want to. You may think you're right. You're wrong. You cannot compare us to WCW. I was there at both. You were not. So there's that.
So I love it. Tony's absolutely right. There's no fucking way in the world you can compare WCW to AEW. He's in both companies. He would know. Now, I never said, by the way, I never suggested. I don't know that I've ever commented specifically on those tapes saying it was WCW's version of the finger poke of doom. And I really don't think Tony was implying that I said that.
No.
I don't think that was necessarily directed at me. I'm not taking it personally. If it was, it's kind of over my head because I've never said that. But he's right. You could compare WCW and AEW if you're looking back to WCW in maybe 1991 or 2. That I think might be a fair comparison. But beyond that, WCW. Here's another point that I want to make, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But the shit stain, Dave Meltzer, is constantly the surrogate for AEW, you know the guy, constantly trying to cover, and he thinks he's clever enough that he can hide it, but he's such a horseshit writer. He has the writing skill sets of a fourth grader, so he's pretty easy to figure out when it comes to his intention. If you're trying to figure out what he's saying, that's different because the man, like I said, he's got the grammar skills of a fourth grader. But again, the surrogate, the shit stain, Dave Meltzer is constantly saying, well, you can't compare time periods because television's changed. No shit, Sherlock. Yes, that has. But what you can do is go back and take WCW, for example, 1992, just before I got in charge. I was a third string announcer. I'm not trying to put myself over here, just pointing out facts. Since supposedly guys like Dave, who use the term metrics every opportunity he gets, because he just learned it probably in the last 12 months, trying to come off as a quote unquote analyst. If you want to be an analyst and you want to compare, take a look at market share. Look at WCW Saturday Night's ratings back in 1992. Go back and look at it. It's out. You can Google the internet. I had people in Australia making jokes to me about Googling the internet. Memorable moment here on 83 Weeks, evidently. But go back and do a little bit of research. It doesn't take much. And look at compare the viewers for WCW Saturday Night at 6:05 Eastern, 3:05 Pacific. Compare them to Monday Night Raw.
You had like a 2.0 back then, roughly.
Yeah, which at the time, I don't even want to try to guess off the top of my head, over let's call it 900,000 people per point. So there's like 2 million people, 3 million people watching WCW Saturday Night. And then look at the audience for Raw. This is the same time period. Not comparing ratings, just look at total viewers for WCW as a percentage of Monday Night Raw and WWE, the incumbent that had been around for 30 or 40 years, whatever it was. You'll find that WCW was already competitive, even though we weren't on the same nights. I say we, WCW wasn't on the same nights. They were on Saturday nights. Monday Night Raw was on Monday night.
Off the top of my head, Raw's rating was like 2.2 to 2.5.
Yeah.
So you guys were around a 2 and they were like a 2.2.
All right. So thank you for keeping this short.
Yeah.
But you get my point. Now compare on a percentage basis where AEW is today compared to WWE. It's a fraction of where WCW was in terms of market share to WWE. So this comparison that people, as Tony said, want to try to believe is not even fucking close. And let's not even talk about WCW in 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, even 1999, which was hell on earth for me. We were more competitive compared to WWE than AEW is today, which is why this whole comparison, this constant comparison, is hurting the credibility of everybody in AEW that tries to defend it on that basis. And the more Dave Meltzer and the people on the internet who try to do the same, the less credibility AEW is suffering from it. The perception from so many people is going in, it's circling the toilet because of this nonsense. And Tony's right. You absolutely cannot compare WCW to AEW in any way, shape, or form.
Another comment that Tony Khan has had since you and I last recorded. Quote, there's a number of big factors that would play into why wrestling has seen such a great renaissance in recent years. I think it comes from the great competition in wrestling right now and the fact that there are so many great stars competing right now. Everyone knows that the most real thing in wrestling is the competition between the companies. The companies hate each other, and it will be a natural resource that powers the industry. They want to beat each other and take everyone's free agents, and that is what makes it interesting for everybody else. What do you make of this comment from Tony?
Delusional. Any clear-thinking person who isn't emotionally invested to the point of it clouding their judgment understands it to be fucking delusional for the very reasons I just gave you. There's nothing competitive about this situation. And AEW and Tony Khan, as much as they try, as Tony Schiavone said, and they believe because they want to believe that they're actually competition in their minds, particularly in Tony Khan's mind, evidently, it's not reality. And continuing to push this non-reality as a fact only undermines any hope Tony Khan is ever going to have of reestablishing credibility with his audience.
Let's do another quote from Tony. This one says, to be AEW is to be under constant attack. You do a great show, and the next day someone is saying something negative. You do 5 great shows in a row, someone says something negative. At this point, I don't worry about it. We just need to go out and do great shows. And he had this to say about X or Twitter. One platform, X. It is amazing how much time is spent in this industry on it. And sometimes becomes what I've seen, sometimes a bit of an echo chamber. And also there's a lot of bad faith. There's a lot of bad faith posting on it. And you're having a great day in the business, like do the #1 show, and people will try and tell you, you didn't do something great. Or you can break the world record for the most tickets ever sold to a wrestling show and have this massive, huge success on pay-per-view. It just hit a home run and the wrestling's great and everything is great. And people are trying to tell you there's some sort of problem with it or some detriment. And I got to say, he's right. Like he is taking a lot of criticism, even when things are going well. But I think you're also right. He may have invited it on himself.
He's taking a fucking bath in it. He wallows in this stupidity and delusion. He's creating the negativity he's whining like a bitch about. If you don't like it, Tony, shut up and wrestle. Go back and listen to the 83 Weeks episode and just listen closely, because there was no ill intent. There was no bad faith. That's another term both Dave Meltzer and Tony Khan love to use. Again, another word that I think, at least in Dave Meltzer's case, he probably just heard or learned recently. Bad faith. I'd like to know where that bad faith is coming from. Is it coming from people that are pointing out the realities of your business? Is it people from pointing out the fact that you're having a hard time drawing 3,000 people to a live Dynamite? I mean, where is the bad faith in people pointing out and talking about the realities of your business and the stupid things you've done and the poor leadership that exists? It's not deniable. It's not fabricated. It's right here, unfortunately, for the entire world to see. But rather than recognizing it and adjusting, pivoting, and being smarter about it, you're wallowing in it and inviting more of it. Good luck. Have at it.
I don't know that this will ever change. I think this is the way it is. And our man who helps us with our YouTube here, Ant Evans, you've seen recently on Wise Choices, he ran not 1 but 2 polls during our show today. And the poll showed that 76% of fans felt like Tony aired the footage because he was upset over the interview with Ariel Helwani. I can't even imagine that is a stretch. Like, that's the only logical thing. If he was going to show the footage, because I saw people online saying Eric Bischoff would have showed the footage. And I thought, you're damn right he would have in September, not now. Like, to me, if you were going to.
Well, I had Punk under contract, and if I had a plan, hell yeah, I would have.
Like, to me, if you really wanted to turn people against Punk and use whatever momentum and explain and justify, then you would have shown the footage that day when you let him go and you made that announcement at the United Center. That didn't happen, of course. And 76% of people think it's Ariel Helwani's interview with Punk that got that footage shown. And 90% of fans watching now on 83weeks.com, I can't believe this is a real sentence, say that jet lagged Eric on his phone is more fun to watch than AEW. That to me is just silly.
No, it's not. I guarantee I'm more entertaining.
I'm not saying that your promos aren't better and your stories might not be better, but I haven't seen you do not 1 tope suicida. So I'm going to watch a little AEW.
Do not sell me short. You saw the video that I posted this morning on
I did, man. You were out there, right? Lil Yachty,
dancing out to the crowd. I shot that in Australia. I was in Australia. That was my meet and greet.
Oh God,
fans in Australia. I am over as Rover. Ask Chris Masters. Chris Masters. He was there. He saw it. He was backstage with me. He said, "Go on out and dance." I said, "Chris, I can't dance, man. I'm 60. I'll be 69 years old next month. You know, my moves are." He said, no, Eric, you could do it. You could do it. And Chris inspired me to, rather than just walking out doing that cheesy point to my dimples thing and telling everybody, I love you people. I love each and every one. Rather than doing that, try something new, Chris said to me. And I thought, Chris, why not? Why not? So I danced my way onto the stage, and I thought I'd post it for everybody today.
Well, we're glad you did. And we're glad you guys tuned in with us here for a live episode of 83 Weeks. We're not done. We're still going to knock out a handful of questions. We'll rapid fire some. I have no idea what you asked here, Robert S. I know you're asking another language. Maybe Eric knows, but appreciate you helping us out. Any idea what the hell that says, Eric?
Ambition, Robert. Ambition.
Okay. I don't know what that means. Cool. Hope it works out. Swayze says, it seems like Tony Khan's strategy is to outbid any free agents, which is why Drew has yet to sign with them. He's using the 1995 WCW strategy. You know, that is something that we should talk about. You know, I mean, Tony Khan even made sure to mention, hey, everybody's trying to steal each other's free agents, and that's what everybody else talks about.
Can we stop right there? Can we stop right there? Who has WWE tried to sign that they haven't been able to because that talent subsequently chose to go to AEW? I'm not saying there aren't any, but I'm just saying, who are they?
Mercedes Moné, Will Ospreay.
Mercedes Moné, based on what I have heard, I don't know this is a fact. I'm not Dave Meltzer. I'm not saying this is a fact. I have it on reasonably good authority that she asked for an amount of money that WWE wasn't willing to give.
Correct.
So WWE chose to let her go.
Correct.
There's a difference between a choice and a steal. Big difference. I know it sounds like it's just semantics, but it's really, really not. Because AEW is trying to create the perception that there's a battle for these free agents. And I'm not suggesting that there's not interest in some of these free agents. Of course there is. There should be.
Well,
it's not unusual.
I guess I'm not following you. Like in a free agent battle, I mean, even let's compare it to buying a house. If you have two offers, you take the one with more favorable terms.
Are you suggesting that WWE couldn't have meet or beat the offer that AEW gave her?
I think I'm going to say this respectfully. WWE didn't think she was worth the investment.
And she's not. And they were clearly right.
I'm not arguing any of that. I mean, well, I don't know what I don't know what pay-per-view she's going to sell or what merch she's going to. I don't know any of those details. I don't know what's going on under the hood of AEW, but I'm just saying WWE was interested in signing Sasha Banks back. And let me ask you this, Eric. If AEW didn't exist, where does Sasha Banks wrestle today?
Doesn't, but that has nothing to do with whether or not anybody's trying to. The term steal. See, that suggests a Monday Night War type environment. There is no Monday Night War type environment here. Mercedes Moné came in, she left, walked out of WWE.
Yes.
They were interested in her coming back. She came in and demanded something that WWE went, you're not worth it. See ya. And then Tony Khan paid her what she asked for. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that either on this show or maybe another one because we're running out of time. There's a strategy. There's a chess game going on here that people don't quite understand.
I agree.
It's being played out right under your fucking noses and you don't see it. And I'm not talking about the general population. I'm talking about the people that are constantly defending this free agent stealing battle competition. It's being played out right in front of you. And it's funny as hell to me because I've seen it before. Hell, I've been a victim of it before. I know exactly what's going on. But the world can continue to think that because Tony Khan said it, that WWE hates AEW because they're competing for free agents. WWE is going to get whoever they want.
Yep.
Now, in the case of Will Ospreay, who had a unique, evidently, based on what I've heard him or read him say, he has a unique situation and AEW was a better option for him. As I said earlier, God bless Tony Khan. God bless Will Ospreay and his partner for being able to achieve what they've achieved based on Will Ospreay's dedication, hard work, and God-given talent. That's fucking awesome.
Agree.
But it has nothing to do with anybody competing and stealing. It was a choice. I don't get the competition and the stealing and the free agent bullshit. It's another extension of the fantasy world that Tony Khan lives in, and he's trying to sell, and nobody's buying it.
All right, let me get back on track here. Where I was going is, since we have now some topsy-turviness in WWE Talent Relations, and we mentioned a lot of critical key contracts, specifically Natalya, Becky Lynch, Drew McIntyre. I mean, there's a lot of big contracts that are going to be coming up, including Seth. I mean, so there's some interesting, what's going to happen? Where are they going to go? Could we see them jump ship? Certainly WWE has a ton of momentum now, but I am wondering, since we just saw some AEW layoffs and some releases, now we're talking about potentially bringing in some other new big signees. Would you be surprised to see if any of those folks jump ship? Or do you think AEW or WWE might actually start playing a little more hardball since they've seen some layoffs on the AEW side of things? I mean, it feels like the only reason the layoffs would be happening and some of the dual tapings would be happening would be if we're trying to get costs in line. From the outside looking in, that feels like a Cochet thing. And he, of course, is the new COO of AEW. But I'm wondering, do you think any of those talent, like a Drew McIntyre, like a Becky Lynch, is there any chance they wind up jumping ship this summer to AEW?
Only if they're in it for the money grab. And this is their exit strategy. And they don't care about their legacy. They don't care about what happens to their professional future. They're just in it for the money. Then they might go. But if that is not the case, they're not one of those people that are going to look at anything that's going on at AEW or any of their peers who left WWE to go to AEW and go, that sounds like a good plan. First of all, if I'm Becky Lynch right now, whatever I thought I was hoping to negotiate for just got bumped by about 30% with the injury to Memmy. I think Becky's in a much stronger position.
Did you just call Rhea Ripley Mammy?
Yeah, why not?
I thought it was Mommy.
Mommy? I thought it was Mammy.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, tomato. I want to let everybody who signed up for 83weeks.com and joined, they're one of our new members here, know that we're going to have some new videos this week. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell, and tell your friends about 83weeks.com. You can ask Eric Bischoff live questions. Eric, we got 24. No chance we get through them all. We got 2.5 hours deep here, but let's try to blitz through a few of these.
And I'll try to be fast. I promise.
UK Goalie Network says WWE got Tony to blow 30 minutes of his 2-hour show trying to fire back without using a single second of their own TV time. How amused was Eric by all this? I'd say pretty amused.
In a sad, morose kind of a way, but yeah. And thanks, Goalie Network. I appreciate it very much, brother. We're glad you're here across the pond, as it were.
Sid says, do you think UFC guys, especially with great mic skills, will start showing up in WWE? Connor, Nate Diaz, Masvidal. I don't really see any of those guys going to full-on wrestling school, but I could see them crossing over and doing a tag match at some point. What say you, Eric?
I mean, why not? You know, you look at what Logan Paul has accomplished and Bad Bunny before him or around that same time, anything is possible, particularly somebody with great, martial arts skill sets that can learn the art. Anything's possible. By the way, and I feel so horrible about not remembering this individual's name, but did you see the guy in the UFC that cut the promo after his fight about Austrian economics?
No, missed it.
Oh my God. It is like the best. Take your politics, your view on politics, take it out. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Go back and find that. I'll send it to you, Conrad. I'll find it. It is the best promo I think I've ever seen because it came from out of fucking left field. It was so good. It was so great.
We should do a few more questions here. Talking Wrestling with Pondwater Dave says, would AEW get more viewers on a different night? Tuesday against NXT, or maybe even head-to-head with Raw? Would they benefit from channel changers? So that's something I never considered. Could AEW actually somehow be helped by actually going head-to-head with WWE?
That's a complicated question. And Pondwater, thank you very much. Look forward to crossing paths with you again soon. Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, it could be a good thing for AEW to go head to head with WWE. In theory, but so much would have to change. And one of the things that everybody would have to be prepared for is it would take time. You're not going to be able to achieve what Nitro achieved. And that's because things are different now. It's just not possible. You could bring in Steven Spielberg to be your head of creative. It's still not possible because things are different now. But there could still be a significant benefit if you had the right people in place, you had the right vision for your brand, and you had the discipline and the patience to achieve it. You certainly have the talent. But we're talking about such a theoretical opportunity that you would need quantum physics-like mathematical aptitude to even try to project the odds of success now, because it ain't happening.
Jim says, Conrad, I know Eric and I are still lost on this, so I turn to you. Please explain what makes AEW a competitor brand and what are they competing for and how you measure it. They're a challenger brand. That's the word you meant to use there. And challenger brand is basically PR speak for we're not the big dog. So if you ever sat down at a lunch counter or dinner or whatever and said, when they said, and what would you like to drink? I'll have a Coke. Oh, we don't have Coke. We have Pepsi. Okay, that's fine. Pepsi's the challenger brand. Coke is the established one. WWE is the Coke. AEW is trying to be the Pepsi, and every now and again they look like Pepsi, and sometimes they don't.
They look like Conrad, and not the Dave one.
Yeah. Shout out to Michael Scoggins, who's a new member. Appreciate you joining the group here at 83weeks.com. Tell your friends to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. Nice little comment here from Will Francisco. Just wanted to thank you. He had memories with his mom that helped get through losing her 9 years ago, and your contributions to wrestling helped with that. So thank you for sharing that, Will, and welcome to the club. Thank you for joining us here at 83 Weeks.
Let me say one thing, Will. Appreciate the comment very much. And that's one of the things, and it's just like this comment, it's one of the things that I love going to appearances now. I used to dread it up until a couple of years ago when I figured this stuff out. But when you hear stories like that, when you have conversations with people like Will, who tell you how much wrestling meant to them, either as a kid growing up or in circumstances like Will is referring to here, you know, I didn't think about it at the time because I was too caught up in my own nonsense and what was going on. But to be able to think back and reflect back and be prompted by statements like this and realize that what we did contributed a lot more than I ever imagined it. So thank you, Will, for that. I appreciate it.
Shout out to Justin, who also joined us here at 83 Weeks. Want to highlight him becoming a member. We greatly appreciate that. Zach says, with the viewing numbers not showing up for Dynamite after the Stone with the footage, do you think Tony might let somebody else have the pencil? No, nobody's ever getting the pencil but Tony Khan. Tony Khan, when you were a kid, you played with action figures. Tony Khan plays with human beings. I mean, think about that. When we were all kids and we had those action figures in the play ring, and we'd say, what if this guy fought that guy? Tony Khan gets to do that. And when he thinks about, man, that guy versus this guy would be a good match. Somebody in AEW makes the graphic, he tweets it out, and here it comes. I think that's part of the fun of AEW if you're an AEW fan. David Hernandez says, in your opinion, is there anything about AEW that you're particularly looking forward to? For me, I was interested in the CM Punk security footage, and now it's the return of MJF. Eric, is there anything about AEW that gets you excited?
I agree with Mr. Hernandez. David, thank you very much for joining us here and for your question. And I agree with Dave. I'm looking forward to MJF coming back. That I am looking forward to. I do look forward to the stupid things that Tony Khan says because it gives me great content here on YouTube. That I do look forward to. But that's it. And I will be interested to see Will Ospreay work because I really do enjoy watching him in the ring. You know, I take quality of story or lack of story, I just throw that out the window. And in his case, for now, because it's new to me. I haven't been following his career and seen a lot of his matches, didn't pay attention to New Japan or wherever he came from. Just doesn't fucking matter to me. But I do enjoy watching him for now until, I quit being interested in seeing phenomenal matches because I've seen him have one too many phenomenal matches without any story. At that point, I'll probably fade away. But that's not going to happen anytime soon because he is such a special performer in that regard. That's about it.
Mike Browning is a big fan of yours. Wanted to thank you for all the memories with Nitro and the NWO. Thanks for the contribution and for hanging out with us today, Mike. And your pal from India that you just mentioned that you just spent so much time with in Australia. Our man Barat says, I hosted a TNA panel with Moose and Josh, and it was refreshing to hear them focusing so positively on what they were doing rather than on the competition. Should we talk more about TNA as the alternative? I mean, I think that's what TNA has in common with AEW. They too are a challenger brand. Why do you think we don't talk about TNA more than we do?
Probably because of the lack of the exposure in domestic US TV. AEW has the advantage of being on a major cable platform, 2 of them. And TNA doesn't. So their exposure to the mainstream audience is significantly hampered as a result. But from what I have seen of them, and especially under Scott D'Amore, and that's not to say it's not going to continue to improve and the dust is going to settle and there'll be a good solution. I don't know. I have no idea if that is the case or not. But what I have seen, limited as it may be, has been, it reminded me very much of the kind of wrestling that I enjoyed watching. It's story driven, it's athletic without being necessarily, gymnastics floor exercise constantly. I love the high flying acrobatic stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's why I created the cruiserweight division, for crying out loud. So it's not that I don't like it. I just like it in moderation. Like a lot of things. A lot of things I love in moderation. But I think TNA has the potential. Certainly as much potential from a creative basis, from a creative perspective as AEW. Probably more so, much more so.
Let's do a few more live questions here. Appreciate you guys keeping them coming. Mr. SEN says, Eric, what do you think of the idea of Vince teaming up with Tony to spite WWE? If Tony and the Bucks gave Vince full creative decision and input, could Vince save AEW? Boy, what a crazy question that is, Mr. SEN.
When you take flying lessons, one of the first things they do, especially when you're getting ready for even when you're getting ready for your instrument rating, is your pilot instructor, your flight instructor puts you under what they call the hood, which gives you very, very limited vision. All you can see is your instruments. And they do it intentionally, and they take a couple turns to the right, a turn to the left, and they go up and they go down, they turn to the left, turn to the right, all designed to induce a state of vertigo. And the reason they do that is so you can become familiar enough with vertigo to recognize it early on and take appropriate action, I should say. This question just gave me that same sense of vertigo that I experienced the first time my flight instructor ever put me under the hood. The only reason I'm not falling out of my chair is the 700 plus hours I have as an instrument rated private pilot and my experience with vertigo.
I love you,
Mr. Sen. Thank you very much for the question.
An Irish Penguin, appreciate your contribution today. Thank you for that. Shout out to Andrew H., who made a great point. TK has done some good. He brought together Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and Jim Cornette.
That's sweet.
Doug Wynn says,
never say never, brother. Never say never, Andrew. Thank you.
Doug Wynn's got a couple of rapid fire comments here. WCW was watchable at least back in the day. TK may be the new Herb Abrams, but with money. No comparison there. Come on now. Matthew says, from a TV standpoint, does having the key demo really matter since they can't keep and increase the lead-in audience going into prime time? Would you expect a new deal? And he tells us how to pronounce his last name. It's Matthew Ebley or Ebley. Chat me up. What do you think the odds are that AEW winds up sticking around Warner Brothers Discovery? Do you think they stay on TBS and TNT, or later this year will we hear some different news?
I've been 100% consistent every time I've been asked this question for the last year. And that is, I don't know. Because if you don't have a very close look at what's going on inside of Warner Brothers Discovery, there's no way in the world you can possibly make an educated statement about the potential of AEW sticking around. It depends on what Warner Brothers Discovery's goals are. For example, I just recently read that Warner Brothers Discovery is interested in getting the rights to women's NBA, which is getting freaking hot right now. Well, I should say women's basketball, at least in the college ranks, is getting hot right now. I don't know about the WNBA, but that could throw a wrench into it, or it could help it. There's no way of knowing unless you are on the inside, and I'm talking about senior executive level.
Right.
Inside. Not because you have a friend that works in the marketing department or you have a friend that knows somebody that works for somebody. That's not where these conversations are taking place. The real conversations, the ones that really matter, are taking place way outside the scope of anybody in the universe that you and I, Conrad, are playing in are going to have access to. That's a fact. Now, that being said, as I have said so many times, I don't know. I think there's a reasonably good chance, but I don't think it's guaranteed. It depends again on the goals, because if Warner Brothers Discovery bought into AEW originally, hoping to grow an audience, that ship has sailed, and it's too obvious to everybody. If it's true, and I don't know that it is, but if it's true that Warner Brothers Discovery has a percentage stake inside of AEW, they also have a look at the books.
Yep.
And that ain't going to be a pretty sight.
Nope.
But if Warner Brothers Discovery feels that in order to somehow resurrect TBS, TNT, or to grow them, I shouldn't say resurrect, they're not dead for crying out loud, but they're hurting like everybody else. It's not just them. But if they feel like that 6, 7, 800,000, maybe once in a while 900,000 viewing audience is important to them, and that demo, to Matthew Ebley's question, that demo is important. It is an important demo. And if they feel like they're better off with AEW until they figure out a better solution, then they'll get a deal. But not for any other reason than that. It would be, in my opinion, I don't know this is a fact, if Warner Brothers Discovery decided to re-up AEW, which I think is a 50-50 shot at best at this point, it would be to stop the bleeding, not to solve a problem.
Well, we hope to solve some of your problems. You got a question for us, drop it below. We will be sure to be back doing more live YouTube later this week for an episode of Wise Choices. Want to give a quick shout out to Aja Sandman and Robert Rose and FT3. Greatly appreciate all of your contributions. A little more love for Mike Browning. You asked a couple of great questions today. David Hernandez, Eric and I are not gamers. We are not really familiar with the AEW game or the problems or complaints, but that is something for us to talk about in the future with a gamer. So thank you for that suggestion. Chosen 1575 wants to know, will CM Punk sue TK for the footage? No, sir. I don't even know that they were supposed to air it. There were reports that technically you can't release footage like that from the UK. I don't know what that's about or not about. I don't know all the legalities, but I do know that AEW started copyright striking on social media. And that's something they do a lot on YouTube, but not really on social media. I didn't bother asking any of my friends in AEW because it felt like a weird thing to ask, but I can't imagine Punk would be upset that he got free airtime and publicity, and it didn't make any sense to me.
I agree.
Shout out to Gary Wendell, who made a donation. Greatly appreciate you being here. Want to throw some love to Erico, who just signed up, and shout out to Perp. Appreciate you being a listener down in Australia. And listen, this was a lot of fun. And Eric, I know you've had that one tweet that you wanted to air on the show. It actually came up while you were in a bathroom break, and you sent it to Dave. And I said, okay, Dave, you can show it, but do it at the end. I can't believe this is real, but WWE had 18 consecutive sold out television tapings. And there was an account that's Elite Rockers, Elite Club SOB, I guess, on Twitter, points out that, and I don't know if this is verified or not, it's been 79 weeks since AEW had a sold out weekly television show. So since they sold out one of their TVs, Eric, 79 weeks. So if we get 4 more of those, well, you know,
we have a whole new show. We could go back and look at every one of the AEW episodes and break it down and talk about how it could have been better and why.
Oh God, listen.
I'm not kidding you. That would be awesome.
Boys and girls, drop your questions.
I'm going to be doing this shit for the next 10 years. Oh my God.
Goodness gracious. Stay tuned, boys and girls. Tell your friends about 83weeks.com. It's totally free. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell, and be sure to look out for Eric. He's going live later this week. And if I were a betting man, those ratings are going to come out on Thursday. The Observer is going to come out on Friday. Thursday or Friday, I might be handy with a YouTube. That's all I'm saying. 83 weeks.
Hit that notification.
Yes. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notifications bell. You're going to push notification when Eric is live, and you can ask him questions here at 83weeks.com. And yes, we are getting back on track. Normally, Eric is going to do Wise Choices by himself. It's a one-man show. I might do run-ins every now and again. This was our 83-week show, but we thought, you know what? We're already late because of Australia. Let's just do it live for YouTube. So you'll catch 83 Weeks every week on your RSS. But you don't want to miss what we're doing here on YouTube. So hit the button, damn it, 83weeks.com, and we'll see you guys next week right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff.